What's up, everyone? Welcome to Ink, Drink, Think, the show where we ink art, drink beverages, and think about all things comics. I'm your host, Mike Pickard, and today, in honor of the man's 103rd birthday, today's episode is going to revolve around all things Jack Kirby. Today, I'm joined by, as always, my awesome co-hosts and talented friends, Johnny Wise. So, Johnny, I'm going to click on your page.
Hey, how you doing? So, I'm Johnny. I have mostly been focusing on cover work at the moment. I'm getting cover work out there to publishers. So I haven't been doing too much sequential work lately. It's all been kind of based on selling it all in the one illustration. And I am drinking a Beck's because they're cheap.
Nice.
What are you working on tonight? What are you going to be doing for us with Jack Kirby related?
I'm going to be doing Silver Surfer, and I started drawing the Silver Surfer. It was just going to be an isolated one of just the one character, and I kind of realized you can't really do the Silver Surfer without having Galactus in there somewhere. So now he features pretty heavily in the main drawing. Yeah. He kind of ends up dominating it. No matter what you do, you're going to end up with him almost being like fighting for attention in it. So that's what's ended up happening, but I'm rolling with it.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to see how it turns out. And I know that you've kind of talked with us before about how it's almost a finished piece in terms of how elaborate your pencils are. So it's going to be cool when it turns out in its final.
Yeah, I went pretty tight with the pencils. So hopefully I can include some innovation when I end up inking it.
Cool. And then also joining us is our fellow co-host, Nate Wells. So Nate, you're on the screen.
Hey, what's up? I'm Nate. I do a book called Ray Gun Cowboy that I'm drawing. It's up on my Patreon right now. Both short book, but I just want to get some stuff out there that people can read. Done a lot of pitches for years, and like 2 people read them. So I want more people to read what I'm doing, look at what I'm doing. But I'm drinking tonight, or today, whatever time it is where you fellas are. I'm drinking a little Kentucky bourbon and going to be doing some drawing. I'm excited.
Cool, man. What's your topic for the day? What are you drawing?
Today, the Kirby creation that I've chosen is I'm going to be drawing Hulk. I love Hulk. So I'm going to be doing a Kirby-esque Hulk. I try not to, just like rip someone's style, but hard to do a Kirby happy birthday drawing without doing a little bit of the king himself. So yeah, I'm excited to get into inking it, finish the pencils, all that stuff.
Awesome, man. Well, I've seen the pencils and I'm pretty stoked to show them to everybody on the screen. So that's going to be great when it comes up in a minute. But we have one more co-host to introduce, and that is Todd Blackwood. Todd, you're up on the screen.
Hi there. I'm Todd. I'm still figuring out how to be able to show my drawing. I'm an iPad guy for the most part, and I do work in animation. I've done a little bit of everything: character design, storyboarding, but my main passion is comics. I love doing graphic design, and I'm working on a ghost story starring not David Bowie, but the likeness of David Bowie, which is different. And I'd love to say more about that when I've got more to show. But I love me some Jack Kirby, and today I'm working on Quicksilver. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I've got a couple Quicksilvers. I've got him running, and then his face, and then I did a thing. But Quicksilver is going to be my main focus. I'm a giant fan of how Kirby drew hair. And I like to do Quicksilver because of his hair. And when I draw the Scarlet Witch, I give her similar hair.
Makes sense with them being twins and all. But are those your pencils for the running Quicksilver, or are those somebody else's? I know the face was yours, but the running one.
No, these are mine. These are my pencils, and that's actually hand drawn.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Really nice.
That's a good question though, because I have done some drawings over Kirby's pencils, and I don't know if I've done much over anybody else's work, but but yeah, usually I draw everything myself, and if I don't, I should make sure to be clear about that.
No, but that's great. You captured a lot of that momentum in that pose with that running. So I'm very impressed with it.
Oh, thanks. I love Quicksilver. I think he's a fantastic character. There's my pencils for his face. And again, you can see the hair.
Yeah, definitely has that Kirby like inking like
Yeah.
stroke line to it. It's super cool.
Yeah. Do you guys know my Scarlet Witch piece?
No, but if you bring it up while you're still on the screen, we can showcase it.
I will. It's here somewhere. Billions of drawings.
Yeah, that's a lot of scrolling.
I know, right? Jeez, Marvel month just about killed me. So you can see I gave her Quicksilver hair.
Oh yeah, the mid part frills.
Yeah.
Yeah, these little.
That's awesome.
I never understood why she didn't have that too, because Magneto's got him and Quicksilver's got him. So I was like, she should have those too.
Magneto, you are not the father.
Yeah. Wait, isn't he? He is, right?
Well, I don't know about continuity at this point. They've changed it so many times.
Yeah.
It's like always all
I
over
don't
the
know
place.
anymore.
Um,
Nobody knows.
But finally, I'm Mike Pickard. I'm a comic book creator, writer, penciler, inker, sometimes colorist, but not by choice. And today I'm going to be doing a Iron Man and Doctor Doom piece that I'm quite excited to flip the camera on and show you guys. So I'll do that while we're speaking. So if I get all of my crap out of the way, my script for the intro, because I'm terrible at this. Here we have my piece in view. And tonight I'm going to be drinking a Trogs Troganator, which is kind of a weird view from that camera angle, but it's a delicious beer from a local brewer. So I'm quite excited to get into this and talk Jack Kirby with you guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Happy birthday, Jack.
Happy birthday, Jack.
103. Wow. It kind of kills me that Jack didn't live long enough to see how popular his characters in his movies got.
Yeah, especially
Wait,
with
Jack's dead?
What's that?
Nothing.
Wait a minute. You take like 20 minutes to get up and like, hold on guys, I need a minute. Like,
Yeah, I need a second. Oh, I gotta rethink this whole episode.
I really regret sending that birthday card now.
No, it would have been fun to see him do some cameos, but
Oh yeah, can you imagine? At least even in the Fantastic Four movies from the mid 2000s.
oh yeah,
like that would have been
he
really
loved
great to see him
Fantastic
meet the
Four.
Thing.
Yeah. Oh god.
Yeah.
Jeez. You know, he did a cameo in the old Bill Bixby Hulk TV show, I think.
Did he really?
He actually did some back in the magic of YouTube. It's on there somewhere. He played like a sketch artist, maybe a police sketch artist. I might be wrong about that, but it's on there. You can watch it.
That's perfect though. That's like the best kind of role to get a comic creator to do.
Yeah. I've listened to interviews and he sounds exactly like you think he would. He's like, I started in the comics in 1938. Working for Will Eisner in his shop. Then I went and fought the Nazis at the same time.
Yeah, that's one thing that's always really fascinating is that element of like, I mean, we're probably like 40 to 60 years between us all from now or from when we were born from World War II. But in reality, Jack Kirby, who was making Captain America at the time,
and fighting World War II, yeah,
was literally in that historical time frame when he came up with that character.
Mm.
Yeah. I've heard stories. I can't tell what's true and what's not, but supposedly he would actually go up to the front lines when there wasn't a battle going on, and he would argue with the Nazis. He was like, "You guys don't believe this stuff, do you? Come on, it's a bunch of baloney." And they're like, "No, yes, we do."
Just showing them Captain America. Look at this.
I
How
don't
good this
know.
is.
He's just a guy, He just didn't. Yeah, I don't know. he was a moral guy, and I think he expected that of others. I think that was kind of I love Stan, but I think Stan was kind of all about Stan, and he was all talk. Whereas I think it was a lifestyle for Jack. You know.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point because if you think about him as I kind of mentioned to you guys in the chat that we have,
Yeah.
he's one of those historic martyrs of comics. You know, like we wouldn't have Image Comics if it weren't for Jack Kirby's whole story and fight for creator rights and independence to tell the stories he wanted to tell.
Yeah.
And that definitely plays into that moral aspect of like, of hey, I'm doing this work. Like you would think that I'd be the one profiting from my creative endeavors, you know?
Well, you'd think, yeah, but
you would think.
people didn't know. People didn't know it was a job back then. There was a lot of times when the industry seemed like it was teetering on the edge of doom. I know in the 70s, a lot of the guys working in comics were like, "This business is not going to be around another couple of years, and we're all going to have to figure out something else to do." And then, of course, it exploded again with X-Men and Daredevil and Teen Titans and the independent stuff. But like Bob Kane is a different example of that. Supposedly his brother-in-law was a lawyer or something, so when he created Batman, he went in and had a contract done up, and he was wealthy from Batman right from the start.
And Bill Finger was left out in the cold.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Poor old Bill.
Yeah, it's interesting because you know what I watched last night was the Social Network. You guys ever seen that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it was really interesting seeing how something gets accidentally created and then it blows up into something nobody expects, and it's all these people going, "I created that. No, I created that." And it's like, well, did they screw this person over or did they not? Are they a good person or a bad person? You know, it feels like that's something that probably happened in comics a billion times. But Kirby invented superheroes practically. If they hadn't already been invented, he would have invented them, I think.
Well, he definitely reestablished the definition of them.
Meaning what? Like
if you think about with like the Fantastic Four, and people will make the claim for Doom Patrol being released a year or two prior, or from the X-Men even. But
I never heard that before. That's interesting.
The Doom Patrol dated, I think actually might have been the X-Men, not the Fantastic Four, if I'm correcting myself. But
yeah.
They
Doom
dated
Patrol
them by like a year.
I've heard. That's interesting. I've heard that Doom Patrol is one comic I never really got familiar with. In a historical sense, that is. But the supposedly Kirby was not Stan's first choice as artist over at Marvel. He wanted, I think he wanted. I'm gonna mangle this, but I think he wanted John Romita initially to draw everything, but he maybe couldn't get John Romita at first, and he kind of settled for Kirby. Kirby's reputation is very. I feel like it had its ups and downs where people kind of took him for granted a little bit as to how talented he was. I know his premise for Marvel Comics was he said he'd had an idea for a long time about instead of superheroes, he wanted to do science heroes. So that's why everybody at Marvel had an accident where, gamma rays with the Hulk and Fantastic Four go into space, and even Spider-Man gets bit by a bug. But everybody has kind of this accident where they get created. And he liked myths, so Thor. But it was like science meets magic.
Yeah, that's exemplified too in Ant-Man, who was not a superhero at first. Hank Pym was like a sci-fi horror story where he got shrunk down, and they ended up being able to reinvent that as a superhero in that scientific hero concept.
I'm sure that he hadn't just watched The Incredible Shrinking Man either.
No.
There's a lot of stuff that I see that I'm like, oh, somebody watched an episode of Star Trek. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that he was not the first choice because, I can almost see that on first look, especially back then.
Yeah.
He does draw pretty weird. Like.
Oh yeah, it's
incredible.
there's an ugly beautiful thing going on there, but like his,
Yeah.
I mean, oh yeah, I love some Kirby. I like his mundane scenes. Like he did lots of romance and westerns and
Yeah, he did
you know,
romance comics and
yeah, he didn't just draw superheroes. He's really good at everything. But compared to John
yeah, because there for a
Romita,
while they were only doing like monster books.
yeah, that's where a lot of like Groot came from, those monster books. He was originally one of those monsters, I think. Yeah, a bunch of the like Fin Fang Foom. He
Yeah,
ended up, he was one of those
imagine
monsters.
Fin Fang Foom, just
Yeah,
different
yeah,
over the course of
I love
several
that stuff.
books.
Yeah,
So this is a good segue from that point of his art style and the introductions that he had made. But what were your first introductions to Kirby, and more importantly, will you humbly brag about getting him when you first saw him, or were you turned off at first?
Who wants to go first on that?
yes and no.
Yeah, so
It took me a while
Uh,
to get into Kirby.
Yeah.
Took you a while.
For
So
sure. Yeah.
where
The
did-
first book I think I saw was when I was a kid. I got this one of the like collected editions of like a Superman book. It was like Superman from the 70s, and one of the stories was a Newsboy Legion story
Yeah,
that he was writing and drawing at the time. And
yeah, that stuff's great.
yeah, I love it now, but it's all this Kurt Swan art, and I was like, I like what I'm seeing from Kurt Swan. What's this other book? You know, what's going on here? And I liked it, but I didn't
Oh, I
really
see
know
what you're
why
saying.
I liked it.
Yeah,
But they were also doing something really interesting in those books where they didn't let Kirby draw Superman like Kirby would draw Superman. I think the inker or somebody would come in and draw Superman like Kurt Swan would draw
Yeah.
Superman, even though
I was
everybody
gonna
else
say,
looked like a Kirby character.
speaking of Kurt Swan, I think Kurt Swan redrew all those heads, and I think
I
it
think
was an
so,
issue. I think it was an issue for Kirby. I think Kirby was kind of pissed about it. I could be
Well,
wrong, but I
yeah,
think he
of
was
course.
like, "Why are you doing that?" Because
Yeah,
He
because
would
he
be.
did. I've seen him draw Superman, and he draws him the same way. It's not that weird, you know. But there's all kinds of weird correction stories on people's art. But yeah, that was a big one. That it really sticks out. It's like, how do you think nobody's going to notice this?
Right.
He couldn't. Kurt Swan and Kirby couldn't be more different. But Kurt
That was
Swan is the
probably
quintessential
9 going,
Superman.
what the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say that was my introduction to Kirby, was that Newsboy Legion story. And they rode around in like a ship like the Fantastic Four ride in. And I was like, even as a kid, I was like, that's designed excellently. I've never seen anything like that. You know, who is this guy? But it still took me a while to see Kirby as a force in comics. I was like, this is, because I didn't know his reputation at that point.
Right.
And it wasn't immediately appealing to me. It was kind of chunky, kind of ugly, like he draws. But you get more into it, and you're like, oh, it's actually all of it's intentional. One, and that was a big deal for me. I didn't know that you could really make choices when you were drawing when I was like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I was like, you're good or you're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
For me, it was.
Sorry.
Oh,
go
sorry. I was just going to say, for me, it was. My dad had like a box of old comics he read when he was in uni, and I would just raid that box of comics, and it was a very similar thing for me. Like Kirby was. It definitely stood out to me, but at the time, I barely knew what I was looking at. Like it stood out to me as being super bold and pretty weird. And it wasn't until I went back later that I realized, like, oh, I'm looking at something impressive here. It's not just another one of the same that I've flicked through loads and loads of times. I think it was a Captain America. And
Oh, wow.
again, to me, the faces were like, to my young brain, I was like, it's ugly, but it's something.
Crude.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's crude. And it wasn't until I went back. And then you also just see it on like, I don't know. I'm assuming it's the same in America. You see it in like loads of people now have like they'll sell bags and coats and that with like vintage comic art on it because it's cool. And like usually that's Kirby. It's pretty much always Kirby. So now I kind of see it and look at it from the eyes of someone who wants to grab the person with that bag and be very unreasonable and be like, you don't know who that is. You can't wear that until you know who that is.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah, Kirby. It's funny, like with that point, it's like to anybody who's informed on the history of comics,
Right.
Kirby is this unsung hero in so many ways, and
Oh, sure.
and to see his work as commercialized as it is often, it's always like, get that off of there, like
Yeah.
like when you're at like a Home Goods or something and you see like a big Jack Kirby print that's like Iron Man underneath, you're like, no, this is against everything Jack would stand for.
Yeah.
Maybe. He probably would have liked the money.
That's true.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. I think the Marvel movies are going to swing heavily in a Kirby direction. I think they've already been hinting at it.
Yeah. Well,
with
Taika
like
Waititi
Thor
did a lot of
Ragnarok.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that the
That's what
Fantastic Four movies really go full tilt Kirby and John Byrne.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, when I was a kid, so a lot of my early comics were hand-me-downs from my cousin. And one thing that was going on back then was that Marvel was in kind of a dry period, and they were reprinting, doing really cheap reprints of all their classic comics. So these weren't the originals. These were I think Marvel Tales was a good example of reprinting. You could get cheap original Spider-Mans for Marvel Tales, but they did those with a bunch of others. And the one that I got was one of the original X-Men comics that Kirby did with the Sentinels. I want to say it was like number 10, something like that. There was the original appearance of the Sentinels was like 7, 8, 9, and 10 or something like that. And but the design of the Master Mold and the Sentinels blew me away, and it's funny, I didn't think of it as crude per se because the other comics I had were by Herb Trimp and they were kind of similar. I had a Hulk comic, but I liked the stories, and it took me a while to even figure out that anybody drew this stuff. But it wasn't until later I started getting into the Fantastic Four more and remembering that there were all these cheaper reprints you could get of some of that stuff. So I started picking up those books later when I discovered comic book stores and buying old Captain America stories that he did, and Thor and Fantastic Four especially, and being really shocked how well they held up. I was expecting to not be able to get through them, and then I was like, I got to go back and get more. These are great. I need to know what happens next. I would pinpoint any one of those as being the high point, but they're all fantastic. Captain America's are awesome. And the first 100 issues of Fantastic Four are just like, you got to read them. They're so good. So crazy.
That's a great point, too, in terms of readability for an older comic, in how many Golden Age / Silver Age comics are just nigh impossible to get through because it's dated to some degree.
Yeah.
But Kirby and Lee's work together really does hold up in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and
I think there's so much.
Interesting. It's interesting to point out that Stan, after Kirby left Marvel and Ditko quit, Stan never really wrote anything after that. Like, he kind of went off and became the figurehead of Marvel. But at the same time, as a big fan of Kirby's work at other companies, it didn't have that same fun feeling. It didn't have quite that same heart. I love his DC stuff, but there was like a real like push-pull quality to the way that Stan would script dialogue that would sort of take the air out of some of the more seriousness of some of the some of the stuff. Anyways, what were you gonna say?
Yeah. I was just going to say I do struggle a little with going back because there is so much like exposition. Like I bought this is off topic from Kirby. This isn't Kirby, but I read some classic X-Men, and it gets tough sometimes. There's so much exposition, like every single panel. Whenever they're using like their powers or whatever, they have to explain what their powers are. So they have to just be like, "Don't worry, I'll catch him because I know how to teleport. Here's how I teleport. It's going to do this," and it takes ages for anything to happen because there's so much.
That was an editorial thing. That was a Jim Shooter thing. Did you guys know that? Jim Shooter made them do that every book. And it was one of those things.
Really?
I think it's actually a really good idea, but at the same time, like, of course, it'd drive you crazy and you'd want to blow your brains out. But yeah, like the Jim Shooter era of Marvel's really interesting. I love Jim Shooter.
Yeah.
I think he kind of gets a bad rap. But the theory behind that on his part was that he wanted any new reader to pick up a comic and not be lost.
Yeah, of course.
I get it, but like everybody working there was like, oh, I gotta explain. Spider-Man's got to be swinging, and he's like, at time I got bit by a radioactive spider, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And you're doing X-Men, you got 12 different characters, and they're like, my mutant powers will, my ruby quartz visor.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got multiple
like,
characters,
oh my
it
God.
takes up the whole story. Really, what time do you have left for story when everyone has to explain everything they do?
Yeah. I know that when Frank Miller worked there, Shooter had a Jack Kirby page in his desk, and whenever they would talk storytelling, Shooter would pull out that page and be like, "This is how storytelling works. This is what you need to do. This is what I want to see." And Philip Miller was like, "I really hated that Kirby page after a while." But yeah, I don't know. What's your? Do you guys have a favorite era of Marvel? Because for me, the 90s is where Marvel lost me. I'm getting off topic, I guess, on Kirby here, but
no, you're fine.
Yeah, I dipped out around the 90s. Well, I mean, I was born like 95, so
yeah, you did that before
you
could read.
That's a good excuse for dipping out.
I dipped out from back reading. Like I was back reading through it, and I mean, there was a little period where I liked it. Like when I first read Deadpool, it all very much appealed to me because I was pretty young and seemed really cool and extreme. And then I kind of, I dipped out and picked up where they were currently producing. Like a little bit later on, once they got past all of the extreme, everyone's drawing pouches shit.
Yeah. Oh man, that was a thing, wasn't it?
It was. I don't know about a favorite era. I read based on like the artist almost always, and it can be from any era. Like Mazzucchelli I'll go back on all the time, but then there's an awful lot of modern comics that I'll just pick up just for the artist. Not to rag on writers, I love the writers as well, but
sure,
for me it's the artist that really sells it.
Yeah,
I'm the same way, especially I would be the first to admit that my reading catalog of older Marvel books is definitely not up to snuff, for sure. Like, of course, I've read some of the bigger stuff. Like, I've read the first X amount of issues of Spider-Man with Ditko and Lee, and of course,
love that stuff.
Of course, the Fantastic Four original stuff. 80s Marvel with, or I should specifically say, 80s Daredevil, Frank Miller's stuff, of course. But then everything else I've read mostly from Marvel has been more contemporary within the last 20 years, for the most part.
Yeah.
Now, does that include the Byrne Claremont X-Men?
No, actually, I just got ink on my page. Oh well. No, I actually have not read any of their 80s X-Men. Or late 70s for that matter.
You're in for a treat, man.
Yeah, you really are. I mean, I would say you don't have to necessarily read all that stuff from beginning to end. Although I would say that that era of X-Men is one of the easier ones to do that with. But like picking a storyline, there's a Proteus storyline that I kind of feel is like quintessential X-Men of that era with John Byrne and Claremont. Proteus, and the other one was I think it leads into the Alpha Flight first appearance. I love that stuff. X-Men fighting villains in an airport, superheroes fighting in an airport in general, just always strikes me as fun.
It's a good locale.
That's like 4 issues of a comic you could read that would give you an excellent snapshot, as opposed to going with the usual like Death of Phoenix or whatever. Like, but there's some great stuff going on in there.
Yeah, Death of Phoenix, I'm definitely not going to do a dive into. That's some long shit that I'm not going to go for.
You've never read it?
I haven't.
Wow.
It's the same as the Clone Saga. I'm not. It's too long. I'm not going to go into that. Oh,
yeah,
man. I'm having trouble with this board here.
It's understandable.
Where are we at? Everything else is like, it can be wobbly and spiky, and then this board has got to be like exact. I'm having some real trouble. I'm going to have to go real bold with it, maybe. Undo a lot of the shit I've done.
Yeah, you were saying earlier you have to probably have to turn the layers on and off, or else you're not gonna be able to see what you're doing, huh? Or will you?
Yeah. Well, I was doing okay, and now I've got to the board, and it's got to be really exact. Don't know how I'm going to tackle this. This is a tough one.
Meaning what? What's going on?
I got some wobbly lines going on here. Like the anatomy, you can wobble your lines a little bit, but then for the board,
do you know how to make straight lines in Procreate? Do you know what I'm talking about? Uh-oh.
He's gone.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I lost somebody.
Johnny disappeared.
I did?
Johnny, no.
Well,
Well,
I see you,
nice.
Todd.
It was nice knowing him.
R.I.P. Johnny.
I actually, my battery's lower than I thought. I don't know how that happened. That's weird. It shouldn't cut out, but I'll figure it out. Well, anyways, nice Hulk.
Yeah, let me
thanks
there.
Yeah. Is that a nib you're using, Michael?
No, this is actually, it's just a good old Winsor Newton Series 7 number 3.
But
it's not really my go-to brush, really.
Oh, wait, can you hold it up to the camera? So that's a brush?
Yeah, it's a number 3 brush. I usually use a brush for just about everything that I do. I used a nib. I used just a good old G nib for the face, as well as a Hunt 107 for a little bit of detail in the eyes. But a couple years ago, I was like, every artist I love uses a brush. And I had no idea how to use a brush really when I graduated, and so I spent a year teaching myself how to. Oh, Johnny's phone died. How to use a brush, and now I'm so glad that I did. But this is actually a super old brush. I've been using this for like 2 years, and it's still giving me a pretty good line. Surprisingly.
It's a Winsor Newton?
Yeah, Winsor Newton Series 7. I'm using a number 3. I used a number 2 for a long time for a lot of things, but I found that I could cover a little bit more ground with the number 3. It's just a little bit bigger.
Yeah, there's a reason why they're spendy.
Yeah.
Because they last a long time.
Yeah, I've experimented with a few different ones. I really like the Raphaels. I know a lot of people use the Raphael 8404s. Those have never lasted, for me at least, nearly as long as a Winsor Newton. Of course, I've gotten a couple duds. But I've gotten dud Raphaels too, so.
There you are.
I'm back in.
Have you really? So once in a while you get one and it just is no good.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's any fault of the manufacturing. I've gotten a couple shipped to me just like loose in a bag, and so the hairs are all frayed when I get them, and I've got to do kind of a repair job on them.
Really?
Yeah, I buy most of my brushes from Dick Blick,
Yeah.
online, just because I know that at least I'm going to get it in the best shape that it can be in. One time they were out of stock, and I had to buy from, I don't even remember who, somebody who sells through Amazon, and I just got like 3 loose brushes in a bag, and they were all in horrible shape. So that was kind of a bummer because they're not expensive, but they're a little pricey if you get the good ones. So.
It's been a while since I bought one. What do they run you now?
Shoot, it's been a minute since I've even bought one, since this one's lasted me so long.
Yeah.
I want to say the most I've ever spent is probably like $15 on a brush.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not so bad. I was
Yeah, it's
thinking
really
they'd be
not
like
bad.
Yeah. Do you ever use brush markers like pit pens?
I've never used the pit pens. I've used
I'm a big
used
fan
these.
of those.
Yeah, like the brush pens.
Oh yeah, those are great. Those
Yeah, I
things,
really like
those
these.
brushes.
Super consistent lines from them. But I started using those first as sort of an intermediate from like pens and markers to brushes, and then I was like, I got to get into dipping. And maybe it was like like the hipster in me was like, no, you got to do it the old school way. But yeah, now it just gives you so much more control over it.
That's one reason why I like Toth, is because I was like, oh, good, Toth uses markers, so now I don't feel so bad.
Right.
So I just can't get the hang. I can't get the hang of a nib. I can fake it with a brush, but nibs just. I mean, I don't know. Am I? So you're left-handed. Anybody else left-handed?
Yeah, I'm left-handed.
I'm right, but my camera is flipped.
Wait, Michael, you just said that?
Yeah, so if you're looking at my screen right now, I'll bring it up to the main frame for the viewers. But it looks like my left hand is drawing, but I'm actually right-handed.
Well, it looks right-handed to me.
I'm looking at right.
Maybe my screen is flipped. So, Michael, you're the only right-handed one here, it looks like. Or is everybody
right-handed. Is mine flipped?
Oh, wait, maybe I'm thinking I'm looking at Johnny. Johnny, you're doing the Hulk, right?
Nope.
No, I'm Nate. I'm doing the Hulk.
Oh.
I'm just sitting here while my phone charges.
No wonder. Okay. Sorry, fellas.
But yeah, I'm left-handed.
Yeah, I'm left-handed too, so it's even.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a left-handed thing or what, but I can't use nibs to save my life. I literally just tear a hole in the page. I can't even make a line with them. I've never understood it.
I'm using what's it called? I got the box set right here. I can tell you what I'm using. I'm using a Hunt 102 Crow Quill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
the world famous. Yeah. That's what Walt Simonson uses, I think.
Yeah, I've used microns for the longest time, and in college it got to a point where I was like, you know what? Kind of like Nate was saying, like the professionals I like are using this. I'm gonna give it a shot, and so I did.
Yeah.
And even though my line work can be like scratchy and like really all over the place, I do like that weight I can get from it if I push harder, or the gentleness of it. If
you're talking about the microns or the nib?
I'm talking about the nib. Sorry. The nib? Yeah.
Okay. No. Just clarifying.
Yeah, I sort of had to break up with the 102.
Really?
Yeah, I like it, and I still use it for some things, but I find myself I want to do this motion more than the 102 lets me do. I feel like I'm always just like scratching the hell out of my pages because it's so sharp. I really enjoy the 107. It gives you kind of a dead line if you let it, but it's kind of what I want a lot of the time using a pen.
Yeah. I know I've never quite understood how this works, but I know that Toth before he used markers. I might mangle this story, but he used to file down his nibs, and because I think he was left-handed as well, and that was how he got this dead line before he adopted markers as his main tool. I always was curious what was going on there and how he did that.
Yeah, that's a bull. I feel like I would be scared to do that. I would just ruin, what good the tool gave me. But I mean, that dude was a master, so he knew what he was doing. At least
master.
We think so now.
He was the guy that
yeah.
would figure something like that out, which is also apparently he was a hard guy to get along with as well.
Have you guys seen that documentary about him?
Is there a documentary about Toth?
Yeah, it's free to watch on YouTube.
What?
Yeah, I think I did watch that. I watched one at least. I think it was on YouTube, so it's probably the same one. About Toth. Just about his life and art.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I'd love to see that.
The ending does tackle that hard to deal with attitude that he was infamous for. Like they talked to a bunch of people who were his students.
Only at the ending?
Well, because it's autobiographical.
Famous for that.
Yeah, it follows his life, so it kind of waits till the end when he's like an old curmudgeon to get into that stuff. But
yeah, I actually have you guys.
Yeah.
I have a theory that the Pixar movie Up, that's based on Alex Toth. That's the story of Toth. That's exactly what happened. He was a grumpy guy, and then he was finally happy for a little while when he found a lady who could put up with him, and then she passed away, and then he was pissed at the world. And all those guys are giant Toth fans, and I was like, I've always wanted to be able to ask somebody there and be like, that's Toth, isn't it? You guys would know that story. You guys know what he was like.
Well, he famously also flew away on a house of balloons, so I wondered the same thing. Like,
right. True, he did. No one saw it coming.
Yeah,
I thought the same thing. I saw that and I was like, they can't get away with that.
They had to settle the Toth family out of court for that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a good documentary about Steve Rude, and apparently he was the same way. Like he's just a really, really difficult, often fittingly rude person. But the documentary goes into what he's dealt with in terms of like struggling with mental health and all of that stuff. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called.
Guys
like
are perfect
dude or something, but.
I remember reading or seeing the trailer for years, and I always wondered when it was going to come out. Is it on YouTube now? Can you watch it?
The Steve Rude documentary?
Yeah.
I think I watched it on Amazon Prime actually.
Oh man, don't make me get Amazon Prime. I need to see that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was good because I'm a huge fan of that guy, and so it's interesting to learn that like, really kind of an unstable guy. But going back to Kirby, he's one of those guys that would he would just like sort of apprentice and hang out in Kirby's studio. I think when he moved to California, he was one of the younger guys that would hang out. Assist Jack Kirby while he was drawing.
I don't know if he assisted him, but I know that Kirby was really nice and would let people come over and hang out.
Right. I
know
that's really what I mean when I say assist is just hang out with someone who you're a huge fan of.
Sure.
And let Roz make you sandwiches.
Yeah,
exactly. Whereas I think Toth wouldn't let you do that.
No.
What are you doing here? You're still here?
How do you know where I live?
Yeah. Kirby was famously kind. He was a kind person.
Yeah.
Right, to a fault, really.
Yeah. Well, have you ever heard the stories about him working at Ruby Spears, the animation company?
Some, yeah.
Have you heard of the story? You might want to edit this out, but have you heard the story about the man with no arms?
Oh my god.
Apparently, there's a man with no arms, and Kirby was so kind that he knew he would come into the studio because Kirby would take him to the restroom and help him.
Oh my god.
That just speaks volumes on
I-
Jack's part.
Yeah, what
I
a
think
guy.
that's actually super beautiful, but like it's just such a bizarre story of like, how did he know that Jack was in there and that he would do that?
Yeah. Also, how do you broach
Maybe they're
that conversation?
Maybe he was walking down the street and saw Jack, and Jack was like, "How do you go to the bathroom? I work over there if you need any help." I mean, I don't know.
Well, and
But I
that's
know
not
that- I
nice
know-
on Jack's part
What's that?
to just. Well, I know in that case, it's not nice on Jack's part to just single a guy out and just say, "How do you do this?"
Yeah.
Maybe he was a
probably
really
right.
rude guy.
He was just curious. He's probably a right and a wrong way to do that. Who knows? I've read some really funny stories about Ruby Spears working there. I guess it was a pretty nutty place to work. But I know Kirby used to, I know that the mafioso types the gangsters would come into Will Eisner's shop and, be like, "You need to buy our towel service." And, basically trying to shake him down for protection. And Kirby would come jumping out at him and was like, you mooks, get out of here. You got to stand up to guys like that. And it was like, wow. He was a brave little guy. I think he was real small too. Like really,
I don't
really
think he
small.
was a particularly big guy. Very anti-bully,
No.
what I understand. That really bothered him.
Yeah.
I like that about him. Yeah. That's fundamentally. Well, speaking of Kirby interviews, the other thing I heard in an interview with him that I'd never heard before was that he said he decided he wanted a better life for himself and his family is when he was a kid, he watched one of his friend's mothers jump off a building.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, which is, I mean, horrible. It's hard to imagine that. But he was like, I decided I was going to do everything I could to get a better life for me and my family and get out of the ghetto that they were in. Because it was a rough neighborhood. Have you guys read that autobiographical story that he did? It's called
No.
I have it. So it's in this book called Streetwise. And it's called Street Code right here. But look at that double page spread. That is some amazing Kirby art.
Wow.
And that's all probably from memory,
Mm.
But it's all about what it was like growing up in that neighborhood and how rough it was and how much he hated it. And that was basically this whole story is about them preparing to go out and fight the other gangs in the neighborhood. And the kind of the brutality, the rules to it, which were, it had like certain rules to it. And he was like, I hated it. But he did it because that's what you had to do.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I think it's easily Googleable, and it's only like 10 pages, so it's easy to find.
Do you guys, I mean, on the topic of his anti-bully statements and philosophies and how intrinsically tied that is to a lot of his creations, like Bruce Banner, Captain America.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you guys have any particular connection to any Kirby characters? Like, are there any Kirby characters to you that are really like, that's the one that I'm like, I like that guy a lot. Like, that's a character I can morally empathize with.
Oh man, that's a tough one.
Yeah, I would
morally,
say Hulk, Bruce Banner for me. Yeah, I mean, I'm a shorter guy. I'm not particularly, big.
yeah.
I can get pretty angry sometimes, and sometimes I'm like, man, if I could just turn into a giant rage monster and wreak havoc on everyone, I might do that. I think it's just this wonderfully sort of sad story about someone who, has this issue, which on the surface is like, yes, he turns into a monster, but he also has this rage issue, where it's like, yeah, you turn into a monster when you do this thing or when you let this thing get the better of you. And it sort of wrecks. He's a brilliant scientist, and it's sort of wrecked by his inability to get a hold of himself, essentially. And I love that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, for me, see, I just like, I don't know if I can talk about a moral level. I like his weird characters. That's why I'm drawing Galactus and Silver Surfer, because I just like it when he gets really weird, and there's loads and loads of the Kirby dots. I mean, you can see here. I'm definitely integrating that into this piece because I find it interesting, the Kirby dots, trying to include that. But in terms of the moral thing, I never really got on board. For me, it was just the visual weirdness that I guess they're going with on the movies a lot.
How are you gonna do those Kirby dots? Do you know yet?
They're a tough thing. I've not really done them. I've done them in pencils before, like I've I've done them like traditionally, but I don't know yet whether I'm just gonna with the actual.
There's a dots brush in there in Procreate, and I use that for there's a Nightcrawler piece I did, and I had to go back and look at it because I was like, wait, how did I do that for the smoke behind him? And it's like bamf, and I thought,
what part is it in?
God, let me look.
Oh, here we go, disco. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. The element? God, where is it? Touch ups,
maybe. But do you think it's something you should let I've done it before on a brush on Clip or maybe Photoshop, where I downloaded a pack that had a brush for it. It's an interesting topic. Do you think it's something you should let a brush just do, or do you think you should hand draw them?
Well, based on my experience with this brush, whatever brush I used, it made it a lot easier. Mignola is a guy who can do Kirby dots really well, and I've always tried to emulate that, and I just don't have the pattern making skills that he does.
Yeah, it's tough.
I wanted to say it's called Bokeh Lights. Let's see.
Is this something you downloaded?
No, I've never downloaded a brush, and I would like to, but I finally got a font downloaded on here, so I can, in theory, letter in Procreate. God help me all. But I haven't downloaded any brushes. I've been pretty happy overall with the brushes. I'd like to make some adjustments to them here and there, but I haven't really needed to yet. But I'll show you the Nightcrawler piece that I did.
Oh, here we are. I think Bokeh Lights.
Yeah, I think that's what I... Okay, can you see that kind of see the Kirby dots?
Oh yeah, I see that. Yeah, that's pretty Kirby.
Yeah. I remember doing that, and then I was like, I kind of went back and tried to study what I did, because I was like, that'll come in handy later. I'm gonna reuse that someday when I do some Kirby stuff somehow.
You know what? I'm just gonna hand draw it. I'm just gonna give it a go.
Yeah,
there you go. It is a hard thing to do though, because before you do it, you go in and you're like, I'm just gonna draw some dots and it'll look right. But I've drawn Kirby dots, a bunch of times, and I'm like, that doesn't look remotely like what he would do.
Yeah, well, Todd's right. You have to have like that design. Like, I'm gonna go for it now, but I've only ever tried it like once before, and you do have to have that like design mind and like that idea for the spacing of it all. Otherwise, you can just get mad with drawing loads of dots, like. see, I'm gonna cross that bridge when I come to it, basically.
Yeah, I recently did New Gods piece and handled the dots in the background in a similar way, in the sense that I shaped them. I drew them out as like an outline before I did any of the fill on them. So it wasn't like I was just like scribbling them in. Like I was like thinking about like, all right, let's put a larger shape right here to like highlight this area, and then like make sure that there aren't too many smaller dots in a certain area, so it's not too muddled in that design.
Mm. Yeah, it's a weird way of like thinking, isn't it? It's not something I've done with drawing before, like having to like putting those dots in and knowing where to put them that's going to look right is way more difficult than you would think.
I think that's also indicative of Kirby as a whole. Like his style is so geometric that you might be tempted to say like, oh, I can do that. Like I can replicate that blocky style with ease.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's so difficult. Like it's such a unique thing to him that it's almost impossible to perfectly duplicate.
Yeah.
And of course, other artists have come on to do similar imagery, like other Fantastic Four artists who have, or Silver Surfer artists, I should say, who have replicated the Kirby dots, you know. But it's always like their take on it. It's never quite the same.
Yeah. Are there any artistic elements of Kirby's that you guys are trying to put in to yours?
That's a good
I would
question.
say just like the shape of Hulk's face here, the brow right there is.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure I got Kirby-esque.
Yeah, that's very.
Because I think that's the best Hulk. That's my favorite Hulk, is when he's just got this mad shelf of a brow.
Yeah, like when he was a monster, like.
Yeah, I feel like Kirby really liked the, and maybe it was because like how, you know, his eyebrows looked and everything. You know, like he sort of drew that, you know, because the Thing has a very similar sort of like shelf brow, and then Darkseid has it, and you know, it's something that's very distinctively his.
Yeah. But I think it is, especially with Hulk, it's like because he used to be kind of more, it was more like horror, wasn't it? It was like,
right, yeah,
he was like a movie monster, like Frankenstein.
He was a monster, you know.
Which they're kind of bringing back more with Immortal Hulk. Have you guys been reading that?
No, I've only heard good things though.
Yeah, it's really good. It's like body horror kind of Cronenberg stuff. It's really, really cool.
Johnny, though, on your question, I think with this Iron Man I'm doing, and even in Doom's armor a little bit, I'm going to try to get some of that Kirby swirly type inking, where it kind of like ebbs and flows like water. I'm going to try to do that a little bit inside of the metallic bits on this piece.
Yeah, that was something I was wondering about implementing in my Silver Surfer, because he was really like, his Silver Surfer was super swirly, and I ended up I've just done this spiky brushy thing. So I've not ended up doing that. I figured if I just did the Kirby dots, that would see me through.
When in doubt,
so
dot it out.
For the actual Surfer, I've just gone for this like spiky tapered kind of look that I just like doing, and felt like it would work for him.
Yeah, actually, that's a great question about your art. Who would you say inspires that visual technique for you? Because I do get hints of like Mignola in that contrast in your work and that geometric nature to those shadows, you know?
Yeah, do you know what, if I'm being real honest, I don't know what I've not found out what the name for that like spiky edge to like the inks is. I don't know what they call that. It's obviously come from like, I'm guessing like brush stroke that I'm now just emulating by just hand drawing it with inks. But
yeah, it's super clean like feather, you know.
Yeah, it's the feather to it, exactly. but like with Mignola, it's like super short as well. So I started doing it quite short because like my first biggest influence was Mignola, and then like Charles Burns and like what's his name? It's not Tradmore.
Travis
Give me a second.
Travis Charest.
Yeah, I like Travis Dress and who's the guy who did Ghost Rider? My
You might be
mind's gone
thinking of
blank.
Tradmore, if you're thinking of the most
Yeah.
recent one.
Yeah,
Huh.
you know what, it is Tradmore. Yeah.
I don't know who
Yeah,
that is.
Tradmore is one who has like the super dynamic like work, which I really like but couldn't do quite as well. But the he also has that like really feathered like ink look a lot of the time, which I definitely take a lot of inspiration from. And I look at his work a lot to kind of, before I go out like starting a cover, I'll kind of look at his work for interesting ways you can show movement and like composition in your work.
Yeah, his art style is so fluid.
Yeah.
It's almost the antithesis of Kirby, but also a direct student of in a lot of ways, if that makes sense.
We're talking about
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, also, it's not like I saw an interview with him, and this is not Kirby, but it's that era of drawing. I saw an interview where he was talking about he was breaking down one of the Ghost Rider pages, and he was talking about how like he drew. Ooh, I've dropped my pen now. He was talking about how he drew like 5 Ghost Riders or something in one page, and how when he was younger he would read like Spider-Man, and they always did that with Spider-Man. Do you guys remember that in the classic ones where like Spider-Man appears like 5 times, jumping through buildings and stuff?
Yeah,
But in all of the other drawings of Spider-Man, he's colored like the opacity is down, like he's colored like lighter. And Tradmore was just like, he always wondered why you had to do that. Like, if you can represent it visually well enough, you should just be able to draw 5 of them, and everyone should just understand what you're going for, and that there's not actually 5 versions of that character, you know? So I thought that was a really interesting thing that he implements now a lot in his work, where I'll just draw the character a bunch of times in action shots, and it just ends up, you get it. You really don't need to color it differently to show that he's moving and that there's not 5 of him.
That's actually a really great philosophy too, because that is that classic technique of doing like a fainter or lesser detailed movement drawing or figure,
Yeah.
I should say, prior to the main figure that's landing or hitting the punch. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and really, you should just, I mean, just from this, I thought it was really interesting, him just saying you should just be like bolder with it and just be like, no, they're going to get it. You can just draw it in. You don't need to do any like color shit with it. You can just draw it in the same every time. No one thinks that Spider-Man suddenly turned up 5 times in the comic.
Yeah. Yep. Who'd we lose this
I
time?
think we might have lost Nate. Nate.
Oh,
no.
I'm
Nate.
glad. It's
Is
a rite
everyone's
of
phone
passage
just
for this
dying?
one.
Nate, reach out if you can. Godspeed, Nate.
Good luck, Nate. He lost his temper again, just like the Hulk.
Yeah, his
That was a terrible joke.
Can you guys hear me?
now we can, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I like opened another window for like a reference and lost the connection or something. I don't know.
Here, if you guys want, this might be a good time to go around and check out what everyone's doing, because I haven't seen a lot of Todd's yet. So I'm gonna zoom in on yours, Todd, real quick. Do you feel comfortable showing off what you got?
Yeah. There's not much going on, but
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, I got a ways to go. I'm not very good at talking and drawing at the same time.
Is that like a cyan color you're using in the background?
It's all shades of blue.
Yeah, I dig that.
So this isn't a hard and fast rule, but for me, I work in color, and I usually go from light color to darker, and then I do white on top of that. But there's lots of times when that doesn't work. that was a style I developed with doing washes or gray tones and Copic markers. That works great. Coloring, it's a little trickier. So I kind of make it up as I go along, but I usually start with like the base color. And like I've mentioned, I've been trying to simplify my palette, and I tend to maybe over render my drawings a little bit on occasion. And there's times when I look at the artists that I admire that I was maybe trying to emulate in the first place, and I'm like, wow, they didn't do half as much as work because they knew when to stop. So I've been trying, like that thing was my attempt at doing something kind of flat and graphic and not worrying about it or overthinking it too much. So hopefully this guy will not turn out too bad.
I think that's a great strategy too, especially going off of how well the thing came out. Your minimalist thing.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I really enjoy that piece.
I work very differently than I used to as far as drawing goes, and I love laying in patterns. So one thing I thought would be interesting was to try to. I was wondering if I could lay the thing's rocks in like a pattern. I don't think it'll work, but I was like, what if I just drew a pattern of the thing's rocks and then just laid it in flat on an orange body? I don't think it would quite work, but it is. I always think about that kind of stuff. I love drawings that go flat and graphic, and whenever I can utilize that, Howard Chaykin was again a guy that does that to great effect on occasion. He'll do like a zipatone effect on it for a person's suit, or flatten things out.
Yeah, there's definitely something to be said about it's a quote I think that was Toth that
Uh-huh.
I kind of hear in my head and then curse the sky because I disagree with
Yeah.
it, but I also I understand where it's coming from. Of that,
Uh,
the fewer lines, the better. Like if you can
hmm.
convey what you're illustrating in as few lines or as few strokes as possible, you're going to
Yeah.
achieve. I mean, it's particularly more towards Toth's cartooning techniques, but
Yeah.
there's something to be said about that.
Yeah. Well, his drawing could get really complex, though. I know he's the guy that everybody thinks of as simple, but I've seen a lot of his drawings. It's just there's no imperfections, so there's nowhere to hide. He's done really, his style would he would tailor his style to a lot of different approaches, and especially with like the Warren stuff, he did a lot of like clean line style here and just washes there, no lines or whatever. But yeah, that minimalist line thing seems that seems really hard to do. Some people are great at it though.
Yeah, we were just talking about Andrew McLean, who I think is definitely someone to bring
Oh
up
yeah,
in this conversation about Kirby, even
yeah,
in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah.
yeah. He's great. I love his graphic vocabulary.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The way that he kind of lays in shapes. He's a guy that I feel like the confidence in his drawing shows through, and that's a big part of why it works. And it's one of those things where like he just made it up as he went along, probably is my guess.
Yeah, well,
And
you can see it develop. I like
yeah,
in the first volume of Headlopper, you can literally see he didn't have that
right,
much shadow in the beginning, and then
yeah,
there's like an epilogue at the end, and by the epilogue, he'd already developed enough that there was like super heavy shadow that is like
yeah,
a setup for how the rest of the book is going to look.
yeah.
And it's interesting that you see like him just like quite drastically change through just that one series that was called like just him.
But he did you guys see Apocalypse Girl? He did a book at Dark Horse.
Yeah, I know of
And
it, but
it's
I've never actually read it.
I
Same,
love it.
yeah.
And it's beautiful, and it's drawn in a very different style. It's not radically different, but it's more like open line, and I would say the coloring takes a lot more precedent in it. I also love the lettering of it. There's something about the lettering in that comic that really gets me, and it's very simple. But yeah, that's maybe my favorite. I like his work when he lets the color kind of tell part of the story of the picture. He does some color holds in some of the covers that I've really enjoyed and wanted to see more of. I love his black and white stuff too, and I love his sketches. He does sketches that I just am like, oh my god, I would never try to do something like that.
Yeah, well, Mike, in the chat, you showed the Spidey and Venom piece that he drew,
Yeah.
right? That was the commission piece, I think it was. There was just,
Yeah,
it was just spot on in terms of like, it got the vibe just right of how I think it should be. It reminded me of the
Yeah.
old like cartoons as well, just like
well,
very frightening.
It's great. It's great too that it looked like it was a scene out of a story as opposed to like just a cool pose. You know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
You could see that like
he was
continuous.
hiding from Venom, who might have been going on a rampage, and he was holding his abdomen because he was bleeding. You know, I was like, oh, there's a lot to take in here. It looks like a
Yeah.
cover to a story. Maybe something he
Yeah.
read when he was. Yeah, super cool, man. That guy's
Yeah, I
awesome.
You
like
could
that
see,
element
like-
of storytelling, and in just like a sketch or a commission piece. If you can kind of go a little bit deeper, and I'm guilty of it too, where I'm just like, I like this pose, I'm going to draw this pose, and they've already bought it, so there you go. But if you can, kind of like you said, it feels like there's a larger story behind that image, and you're buying a piece of that story, even if it's a story that's never been written or whatever. It does make it a little bit cooler.
Yeah, for sure. It's something I haven't implemented enough in my covers, but it's something on the occasion I have, I'm very proud of it, where like you finish a cover and you're like, okay, well, again, like it might not be related to the actual story that is in the comic, but something's happened before and you can picture something happening after, like, or you're just seeing a snippet of a story, but it still works as its own cover.
Yeah.
So I actually just realized that I was still focused in on Todd's feed, but I'm gonna zoom in. I'm gonna go into Nate on that Hulk, which is so expressive. I love that brow. It's like a big slug on his face.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's something that, like I said before, you see a lot in Kirby. That's one of the things I think about when I think about his Hulk. And when I think about the Hulk, I think about, this, like I said before, this shelf of a brow. I wanted to just show him just fucking angry, It's like he's just landed on this, rock or whatever, and it's blasting to bits, and no real other context or anything like that. But now I'm going in and I'm trying to add in whites where it's appropriate, and deleting. This is something I've been doing lately. I'll go in and like delete some of the black lines where I can make it work, where the shape still works, and make it more of like a pure white shape than like an outlined drawing.
Yeah.
Because you see people, John Paul Leon does that a lot, where there's even just white shapes going into other white shapes. And I think that's, Mignola would do that. And that's something that I've really been trying to work on lately, because it just shows that you're aware of what the drawing is doing. I've smeared a lot of white out. That's great. That's cool. Go in and fix that in a minute. But
Nate, I can't tell you how happy I am that you're showing that you're using white out, because I have a big thing of white acrylic next to me that I break out for almost every drawing. Like,
I use white out like crazy.
Yeah, like I get splotches all over the place. Like if you guys can see on my Dr. Doom where I got that one ink drop that really killed me on this. Like everything else was coming out so smoothly except for that one spot where I messed up. So I'm going to have to break that out soon. But it's so helpful. Like even with the Thing piece I did the other day, going back in with that white paint just to get some more value in the shadows. Like it really helps.
Right. Yeah, and I've heard before, even like going back to John Paul Leon, I've heard that when Paul Azaceta was on Ink Pulp, Sean Crystal's podcast, he talked about getting John Paul Leon pages in his hand, and they were almost heavy because of how much whiteout he used. on the page. And that sort of like gave me permission. I was like, oh, okay, so it's not correcting mistakes. It's a tool to be used in the drawing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I kind of always saw it as like, and that goes back to my design school. We were allowed in the first design class I ever took, we were allowed like 3 spots of whiteout per piece we did, because it was a correction. You know, don't make those mistakes in the first place. And now I'm getting in the hang of, no, do the black and then go back in and add the white on top of that where it's necessary.
Yeah.
They were telling you not to make those mistakes in the first place at school. Is that right? Or
yeah, I mean, it was because we were supposed to be making just like really clean things, as clean as you can get it. So just black ink on the page. That's it. Like I said, we were allowed just 2 or 3.
Wow.
And if you had any more than that, you drop a letter grade, whatever.
Holy cow.
Because it you know, in the eyes of my professor, a guy named Jeff Wheeler, who's an amazing artist, he was like, you're devaluing the piece, because they weren't supposed to be digital pieces. Whereas like this would essentially, if it was a comics page, it would be digital, and I would scan it in, whatever. But we were dealing with this thing is what you're going to be selling or showing, whatever. And that whiteout that, you know, I'm using white gouache, it devalues what you're doing.
Yeah. See, I use white. When I draw analog, I use white for corrections, but it's more like as a painter. So like if I do eyes, I'll usually go in with I use like white gel, those white gel pens, but I'll go in and put little white highlights in the eyes, and a lot of times it's what makes the drawing. It's like the whole drawing comes together when you kind of do some of that. In fact,
I'm trying to think about it like
Kirby dot by hand. You should try it. I mean, I don't know.
I'm trying to think more like you said, like using it like a painter would. Whereas it's like an additive thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is subtracting the black, but it is, you know, like I said, it is a legitimate tool to be used to make the drawing better. And there for a long time, maybe just because of how I was taught, I was so afraid to go in and like sort of admit that I made a mistake, you know, and now it's just sort of like one of the final things I do. I do the blacks, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in now with the white, and I plan now where I'm going to use it. Because over here, these little spots, like that's all white, and I just blacked this out, and I was like, okay, I'll just go in with the white and add these rocks later. And I mean, it works perfectly well. I don't know why I was afraid of it for so long.
Yeah, I think it's something it's close to what you implement on like Procreate or any other digital thing with like the eraser tool. Like obviously it is to erase mistakes, but additionally you can lay in like really thick, heavy black and then look at it and be like, okay, well, this needs like a couple of white highlights here and there. And then you can go in and chuck it in there. And it's kind of the same process, really.
Right.
Well, it's almost like it takes what would be traditionally, like if you were only limited to, like me in this moment, with a nib in my hand and ink to dip it in, you're only adding to the page, right? But like clay, you can add or subtract from that medium. Like you can shear clay from your sculpture as needed. And that's kind of how like white has kind of become, for me at least. Like I would never have thought it, but of course whiteout has been a thing in comics for decades. But you don't really think about that because of kind of like Nate's teacher's philosophy of it devaluing like a physical piece that you're selling, for example. You don't tend to think of it as that element.
I'm sure
of
that
the
teacher
medium.
had a good. I'm sure that teacher had a good idea as to why they were doing that, but I kind of fundamentally disagree with that. But
right, and the further away I get, I do as well. I went to in Colorado a few years ago, the Fred Harmon Museum, the guy who did the Red Ryder comic strip. And that was honestly one of my favorite things, was looking at the page in that museum and seeing where he implemented whiteout in those pages. You know, so honestly, at this point, it's like one of the more fascinating things is like, where did you think you made a mistake, or where did you think you needed to go in with white rather than black? So yeah, my mindset about it has changed entirely over the last few years.
Yeah. Yeah, I love seeing original art.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like erase my pencils as much as I used to, because that's something I also enjoy seeing. As blue line pencils, or even just the gray pencils. I like seeing, where the pencils differentiate from the inks and all of that.
Yeah.
You're not going to see that really on a comics page, but in an original, it adds that level of like, how is this different from what I've. Because even in a comics page, you may have seen a black and white version of it, but how is the original unique to that stuff? The printed piece.
Yeah. I have a Toth comic that's interesting. I bet Toth was really upset about this at the time when it was published, but it was published on kind of glossy paper, which was unusual. But what was cool about it is that I would say that it was photographed from the art, and therefore you could actually see. So the point is that in the blacks, there's all this drawing that he covered up in black, but you could see it the way it was printed, and it was really interesting because I was like, wow, he took all that time to draw that and then just covered it all up in black. Like, he was ruthless with his black, but it was super cool. And that's the sort of thing you see in the original art that you wouldn't see. There's all this variation in the blacks and in people's lines, and there's something lost in printing, even really nice printing.
Do you guys? Well, Michael, I guess I'm asking you, since you're the other traditional guy here. When you scan your pages in, do you like threshold them and everything in Photoshop? Do you get your blacks like 100% black and whites 100% white, or do you leave a little gradation in it?
I leave a little bit just to give a little bit more life to the inks, just out of that wash, because at some point the brush does start to get empty from its hold, and so having that little bit of gray like in the inks, I think looks really nice. But for the most part, I bump the levels a lot. Whites I take up all the way, but blacks and grays I leave a little bit of gray in there.
Yeah, I tend to, on my interiors for the last issue, and it's something that I didn't do for the first two issues of Ray Gun Cowboy. I did threshold the interiors. I mean, I did a lot of tweaking before I did that to make sure that it's what I wanted it to look like. But the covers, I leave a lot of the gray in the covers. And I might change my mind on that for the next one. Who knows? But I feel like I do really kind of want my blacks to be black, and sometimes in the original they aren't that black. But sometimes you get a really, really nice, wash in there that you don't want to delete.
Yeah, that was actually when I went to the New York Mocha Fest, and when I met Mignola when his art was on display, one of the things that was really striking was I tend to think of him as being so contrasting in that white and black dynamic, but all of his pages you could see the wash in the ink, and it was so cool to see that, like overlayers where he blacked one area and then blacked an overlapping section that kind of like made a duotone to some effect. Like it had two layers of black. Crazy cool.
Well, he doesn't just fill his blacks in. It's like he makes a pattern of the line out of the marks that he makes in the blacks, that you can see these little white dots if you look at the art when it's printed, but you don't notice you don't actually notice that until you see the original, and you're like, oh wow, like these.
You can see it in his
not mindless too. The way that he fills in the blacks.
I was gonna say that seems to be the way he pencils as well. He does like little, zigzag hatch lines to sort of fill in, and then when he inks, a lot of times he will just go in and like, okay, this is black. But I think now, though, it seems like his more recent stuff, at least that he's posting online, he is sort of like using a little more wash and letting some of that stuff kind of come through in the finished drawing, which is fun to see.
Yeah, I'm glad to see he's enjoying
pencils,
himself.
Yeah.
I've read so much about Mignola, like, not, hating his job or anything, but it sounds like he was like the biggest critique of his own work, and like Hellboy in Hell he wanted to do so that he could like just have fun with it and do what he wanted, and then it started inevitably turning into its own story, and he couldn't do his own self-contained stuff, and so he like quit for a while to do painting. And I'm glad to see he seems to be like on Instagram just finding a way that he can like post stuff where he can just draw whatever he wants, and it's just good to see him happy.
Yeah, he's always felt that he can't draw attractive women, and he said with this new pencil style that he's been exploring, he was like, maybe I can do it because I can use softer, more delicate lines, and that's why there's so few cute girls running around in Hellboy unless Duncan Fagredo's drawing it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting is he's such a Frazetta fan, and Frazetta drew cute girls that would that wouldn't be part of his visual repertoire, but whatever.
So on the topic of Mignola, kind of to tie it back into Kirby a bit, do you guys think that there is anybody working today who? So just to preface, of course, this is kind of a loaded question because so many of these people are students of Kirby, like we all are to some extent. But do you think there's anybody working today who really captures that same conceptually artistic level that Kirby was able to achieve in his offbeat, bizarre, chunky art style? Like, do you think Mignola is the closest contemporary parallel to that figure?
Man,
Yeah, Mignola, and I keep mentioning him, but I really, really fucking love him. Jason Latour, does a lot of he's got that. I mean, he's almost got it in Seven Bastards. It's not got like the cosmicness in Seven Bastards, but it's got the bold line. And then, did you guys see his recent Silver Surfer draw? Like one arc, like one issue drawing, like story. It was really, really good.
I saw his sketches online, but I didn't read it.
No,
I read it, and he really leans into the Kirby shit there. Yeah, it was just one issue. Yeah, I really botched up the delivery of that. Yeah, it's just one issue, and he really leans into like the Kirby aspect of it, and it's really, really nice. And you kind of then from that look at his other work, like his Southern Bastards work, and can like see the influence even clearer. So yeah, I would definitely recommend reading it. It's really good. And it's literally just like, I haven't read the others. It's like it's some kind of like it's part of like a larger story, but I literally just read his issue just for him, and it stands on its own so well.
Yeah,
it's just one issue will be enough.
Who wrote it?
I don't remember. I don't know if he wrote it himself. He might have done because he does that a lot, but it might have been someone else as well. I don't remember. I'm actually quite bad with writers. I really am more focused on the artist.
There was some recent Silver Surfer series that the drawing was so crazy. It was like nothing I'd quite ever seen before, but it was a long form thing. I think it was several issues at least.
Silver Surfer Black with Tradd Moore.
With Tradd Moore, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. It looks like Andrew McLean, but like on acid.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'll be it. That's very Kirby.
So I know who you guys are talking about now. Yeah, that was crazy. I was like, what? I love it when Marvel lets people experiment. That's great.
Yeah.
But as far as like people doing Kirby in a modern sense, in other words, like, I don't know. It's hard to say. Bruce Timm is good at doing Kirby in the cartoons when appropriate. I think he tends to have Kirby be a default. He put a lot of Kirby in the Superman and the Justice League that made it really fun to work.
Right.
There's
Yeah, I would
tons of
say,
Kirby
you
in
know,
the
that
Brave
same sort of
Bullet
like
series, too.
visual. Right.
Say that
Yeah.
again?
Yeah. Absolutely. I was going to say in that same sort of like visual style. You know, I mentioned it before. Steve Rude, you know, draws in that sort of like
Oh
classic,
yeah,
that like old school style. So he's sort of keeping that like look, sort of live. Not that he does
yeah,
just a whole lot of work now, but you know, I'm
yeah.
a
I don't know
huge
what's going on.
huge fan of that guy.
Of course. Yeah, I don't.
And some
Is
spider
Nexus
to
over? Did he?
I think
What's that?
I'm not sure. I know he was on hiatus for a little bit. I'm not sure if it's
Yeah,
like over.
yeah. I would be curious if he's gonna bring it back but I guess I'll have to watch that documentary. I don't know what's been going on with him. I think there's a lot of folks that just make a lot of money on commissions, and that's kind of all they do anymore, as opposed to pages. Yeah, and Steve Rude might be one of
Yeah, I
those
think
guys
Steve
where he
Rude
does
does a lot of
commissions
movies
and
now.
yeah, I'm sure he's super in demand as far as that goes.
It'd be great to get to that point, right?
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
you just make all of
Yeah.
your money off people being like, draw one picture of this character, please. I'll pay you money for it. I would love that.
Yeah, that kind
Never
of ties
know.
into the
Could
Mignola
happen.
thing that we were talking about, like with him drawing all of these cereal mascots and whatnot. It's like, good for you, man. Like you made it. Like you can
Yeah.
draw Toucan
Yeah.
Sam,
Yeah.
and hundreds of people go crazy for it.
Yeah, do whatever you
Yeah.
want. He deserves it by this point. He should just do whatever he wants to do.
Well, I think he's done with Hellboy. I have no idea, but I think he's probably. I wonder if he'll go back to storytelling, you know, pages, or whether he'll just do single imagery from now on, or whether he's probably feeling around trying to figure out what is next.
Well, how much of Dark Horse does he still write?
How much of Hellboy you mean, or how much of at Dark Horse in general?
Most Dark Horse, like the Hellboy universe, I guess, like BPRD and stuff. I feel like he gets a writing credit on a lot of it. I don't know how much he actually writes himself, or whether he just gets the credit because it's all his.
Well, I think he had a hand in the stories. He wrote all of his own Hellboy, and BPRD and whatever the other offshoots were. Where I think he always helped out with the plot and the stories, and then he had various other people working under him, or
Yeah.
not working under him, but collaborating.
Did you guys read Baltimore?
No, I'm familiar with it. Christopher Golden, did he write
Yeah,
that, or
yeah.
Ben Stenbeck?
Mignola wrote a lot of it, I think, but I don't know how. A lot of it I
Yeah.
get off Comixology, and I don't know how. Some of it I just don't look at the date, so I don't even know how old Baltimore is. But it's really, really good, and he definitely has a writing credit on a lot of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course. Well, it's technically isn't it Hellboy Universe, or am I wrong?
It was a book.
Maybe I'm
It
wrong
was a
about
book
that.
they adapted. I don't know whether they made it Hellboy Universe. I'm not sure what the licensing is on that. But it was originally just a book that they worked on. That Mignola did the illustrations for, I think.
That. Oh, got it.
Or is it a book that Mignola wrote? Yeah, it might be just a straight up book that Mignola. It might be just a straight up book that Mignola wrote, and then he did like some illustrations for it, and then they just made a comic, possibly. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. Too late.
Yeah, this is all recorded. I can't say don't quote me on that.
I was gonna bleep you out when I edit.
Yeah, just bleep out everything I say.
That quote right at the top.
You know the classic TV
I think
I was gonna say, the classic TV buzzing out where it's like, you've lost signal, with like the colors and everything.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put that over your feed for a little bit.
Yeah, do that with everything I do, maybe.
To show up at the end and you're like, oh, what a great conversation, guys. Look at how much I got done on my piece.
Yeah, I think Mignola is really funny, and I would love to see him do more comedy. That's the. Did you guys read The Screw on Head?
Yeah,
Yep.
it's incredible. It's so funny.
Screw on Head is fantastic, and it's so funny. Like, he just did those pages at the end where it's like, I don't know what to write, so here's a monkey, and this is a crazy person.
Yeah.
That's my favorite kind of ending for any comedy, where it just explodes into chaos.
Yeah.
Like the ending of Caddyshack. The last line in Caddyshack is Rodney Dangerfield going, "Hey, everybody, we're all gonna get laid."
Yeah.
Now that's how you end a movie.
So here's another.
To kill the conversation.
No. I was gonna say here's a Kirby one for you guys. So he would have been fantastic on any character, really. Like there are so many characters that I wish had a storied Kirby run on, but of course we never got them. But who would you guys have fan casted Kirby as either writer or artist on? Whether it's a main comic, whether it's an indie book.
Oh man.
Oof.
Well, I mean that Mike Mignola written Jack Kirby drawn Hellboy one shot would have been, amazing.
Yeah.
Which would have happened had he been around, I would assume. It would have been fun. This might sound bananas, but it would have been fun to see him do a run on X-Men with Chris Claremont.
Yeah, that would have been
I
good.
don't know what that would be like. Kirby might have gotten to a point where he didn't want to work with writers, though. I don't know. I think he was writing all his own material for at least the last decade of his life. I could be wrong.
It would be fun to see him do.
I don't think he ever.
Oh. Huh? It would be very fun to see him do like Batman.
I don't think he ever drew Wolverine.
No, I don't know if he ever did.
Well, actually, there is a Batman. He did. Do you guys remember Superpowers?
No, I never saw that one.
There was in the 80s, there was like a mini series that they did that Jack Kirby drew, and it was basically all the Super Friends characters. And so you've got Batman, Joker, Superman, Wonder Woman, and I don't think any of the faces got redrawn by Kurt Swan that time. And it's actually kind of terrible. It's not very good, but it is fun to watch him draw Batman. But
I would like to see him if they just like
Friends. It's definitely not.
If they just like took one of the Tom King stories that are out now and they were just like, yeah, this one's drawn by Jack Kirby. I think that would be really funny. I want to see him do something really grounded and like heartfelt.
Yeah. I think. What's your guys' answer to that? What do you think?
I think
for me
Batman is one of those quick ones. Like Batman is one of those ones where it's like, what would 66 Batman look like? Would have looked like in Kirby's art form.
Oh yeah.
But I'm trying to think of characters who are like big hitters now, who he didn't create. You know.
He never drew Wolverine, I don't think.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
Well, I mean, he did do Jimmy Olsen.
Boy, I'm really blanking on that one.
But it would have been cool to see him do a full Superman run.
Yeah. Well, in Jimmy Olsen, he kind of did. Like, that was him doing that was the thing back then, I think. Both him and Neil Adams both went to companies and said, what's your worst selling title? I want to do that. And so that's how Neil Adams did I kid you. I'm pretty sure this is true. And Neil Adams did a run on the X-Men because they were about to cancel it, and I think that was the main inspiration for what Claremont did when he took over, because he was like, "Oh, I want to pick up where that stuff left off." But it's super funny that Kirby did Jimmy Olsen It wasn't Jimmy Olsen. It was Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal.
Yeah, Superman's pal, his
Yeah,
good old buddy.
Jimmy Olsen, Newsboy Legion. It was like Jimmy Olsen and Jimmy Olsen's pals in a spaceship delivering newspapers. Yeah, just wacky Jack. Fun.
Isn't that what the world needs right now? That's essentially Futurama, but with Superman.
Only a guy from the 40s would come up with that. They've got a cool rocket ship and they're gonna deliver paper.
Look, this guy has the same job as me. Yeah, like all the newsboy kids running around the streets of New York going like, wow, Jimmy Olsen does my job.
Yeah. But they used a lot of that stuff in the Superman cartoon and Justice League, like Inner Gang and the Guardian, I think, and
yeah, he made the Guardian.
Who else? But there's some.
It's funny because you the Guardian off of himself. You know, the Guardian was a Captain America ripoff. But I love Inner Gang so much. You know, they ended up using Jerry Ordway used Inner Gang, I think, really well in the '80s. Which is probably more what the cartoon was based off of. But yeah, what a great idea for like Superman to face a sci-fi gang, you know?
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that Superman was kind of a blank slate, and they could perfectly imprint he was a great place to meld the Kirby Fourth World and Superman together. Because as much as I love Lex Luthor, what a great villain for Superman to battle, but Darkseid, he can match him physically as well as mentally.
Yeah, definitely.
Superman needs challenges, and I'm sure that's always the tough part. And I don't know if that Kirby ever had the intention of those two going up against each other, but it was inevitable. The best moments on Justice League were the cartoon back in the day were when Darkseid and Superman would go at it. Great stuff. Ugh.
Which is so interesting because it's like, I mean, for myself and probably Johnny and Nate as well, being of a similar generation, in the sense that I grew up thinking Darkseid was a Superman villain.
Yeah.
I had no idea that the New Gods existed or that.
It would make sense that you thought that, yeah. Because by that point,
I remember seeing one on Super Friends one time, and he really just wanted to make Wonder Woman his girlfriend. That was a fun story. That was like he was like, Wonder Woman's gonna fall in love with me, and I was like, oh my god, this is so goofy, but I love it.
Then I can take over the universe.
What a way to just completely nerf that character. It's like, no, he's got, it's Jack Nicholson's plot from the 1989 Batman, but with Darkseid and Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That was one thing that that was that they were having that whole art battle in the 80s over returning Kirby's art. Do you guys know much about that?
No, like the originals? Like the original page art?
Yeah, it's one knock against. Yeah, it's one knock against Stan I have. I've gotten over it, but there was a little while where I kind of didn't like Stan a whole lot for that. I felt he really blew it by he stayed silent, and basically by staying silent, sided with the company, and I think he really regretted it. I think Stan never let himself kind of live it down later. He knew he probably shouldn't have done that. But there was a point where they just had all this original art stacked up, and people would like give it away or tear it up. Like nobody cared. And then slowly people started realizing there was a market for it, and people were making a lot of money selling their art. And so artists who maybe had never thought about it before, their art returned. And like if you see photos of the warehouse where they were keeping the art, like it was pretty bad. Like it was water damage and just thrown in a pile, not archived. It was pretty bad. And Kirby had done more art than anybody put together, all the other artists put together. So the problem was that they started returning art to people, but for some reason they sent a contract to Kirby where they said, well, out of all the 5,000 pages of art or whatever you want to get back, we're going to give you 88 pages, but you have to sign a waiver saying that you didn't create, that all of these characters were created by Marvel Comics.
Oof.
And Jack was like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that's a total slap in the face. And the industry really rallied behind him. And Marvel looked really bad for a while over that. But I think they were worried because I think they really knew that Jack had, created basically all that stuff and written it and built that company. And I think they were afraid that people were going to come back and want what they probably, more than they had gotten up to that point. Including more credit. Because I know before the Superman movie came out in 1978. Do you know about this? The credits were going to say Superman was created by DC Comics, and Neil Adams, I believe, led a strike.
Yeah, it was.
Did you know that?
It was. Yeah, Neil Adams went in and said, "Hey, that's not right. These Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster created this character, and they sold him for like $130 or something like that in '38, and they'd been fighting legal battles for years to try and get money and credit back, and it took Neil Adams, who was at the time one of the top talents at DC Comics, to say this really isn't right. Nobody's going to work unless you give these guys credit, and they basically won. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster won pension, basically. As well as, more importantly, arguably, the byline in every Superman thing from now on. I mean, obviously it says created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was such a problem in those days. No one got credit for anything that they did, which, I mean, nowadays is insane.
Yeah.
But back then, that's just how it was done. Yeah. And it took, I think Neil Adams said it took him coming from sort of like an advertising background to know how to negotiate a contract, because in comics up until the 70s and even in the 80s, nobody knew how to negotiate a good contract. And so people constantly got taken advantage of. And now there's Image Comics and all that. And people tend to get credit and compensation for what they contribute. But it is still a problem, even though it's much less of a problem.
Yeah, but they were taking a cue from that. They were watching that. I'm pretty sure Frank Miller went to Dark before Image happened, didn't he? I feel like that's kind of what started all that. I feel like they saw that happen, and it was very organic. But they thought, well, we want to own our own work, and they were in a position to do so. I know the Image guys. The thinking behind it was, if one of us walks off, just get replaced. But if all of us walk off, Marvel's going to have to deal with us, or they're going to be in big trouble and realize they need to think twice before not listening to us. And I know Jim Lee was kind of on the fence about it, and then he went to like some auction where Marvel wouldn't pay for his pregnant wife to come out with him, and he watched the cover of X-Men #1 get auctioned off for like $100,000 or something crazy, and he was just like, "This is ridiculous. Why am I made so much money for this company? Why am I being treated like this? And this has been happening to too many other people. I'm not going to be one of those guys." And I think when he joined in with the original Image guys, that's what clinched it. Then they were like, "All right."
I was going to say, I know. I've heard
let's
Todd McFarlane say, Todd McFarlane walking was, a huge deal, obviously, but he's said, I think a couple of times in interviews, that when they got Jim Lee, he was like, "Okay, this is real. We're really going to do this because we got the guy to come on with us."
Yeah.
You know? But I didn't know the story about the auction, so that's interesting to hear that there was like a story of like Jim Lee going, okay, this specifically I've experienced now. This is messed up, so I'm gonna go with these guys.
Well, this is the book that I recommend that I pulled out. It's called Marvel Comics: The Untold Story, and it's by Sean Howe, and it's awesome. And so everything I just said there is from what I read in this book, and it was so much more interesting than I expected it to be. So if you guys ever get a chance, I look for it on audio. I was hoping I could listen to it, but I don't mind reading it, and it's great because it's like it really gets into the nitty gritty of things that you wouldn't even expect it to. There's stuff I thought I knew about that I didn't know anything about, and it's really fair to. It actually rehabilitated a little bit of my opinion of Stan, and it got the story from all sides about Jim Shooter, including Jim Shooter's point of view. And I really love this book and would recommend it to any of you guys or anybody watching. But I wouldn't have thought the image thing would have been as interesting as it was, but it was really fascinating how it happened. And it said exactly that. When they got Jim Lee, that was when they felt like they could finally get away with doing that.
It's cool that book exists, if only, or I mean, not if only, partially because we'll never,
Yeah.
with the acquisition of Marvel in a lot of ways, we'll probably never get the social network story of Jack and Stan, you know? Like an honest depiction of these two men.
Maybe.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I feel like
Hard
if there
to
was
say.
ever...
I think more of it's been coming out. I'm listening, sorry.
Oh, no. Sorry, I was letting you finish. My point was just going to be like, I could never imagine Kevin Feige or the current Marvel zeitgeist, if you will, to allow something that would be that culturally noticed or seen, like a biopic like that, to be released.
Well, I mean, would you need permission from that guy? It's not Marvel characters. It's not like Stan, Jack, or Marvel characters. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
They might. I know somebody owns the rights to Stan Lee's likeness, because if you follow his former Instagram, his company still posts images of Stan, and recently posted something of him wearing it was a cartoon of him wearing a medical mask.
Oh, okay.
It was very bizarre.
Well, I could see that. Oh, Stan. Stan is the guy that would negotiate who has the rights to his likeness, though. Yeah, that's a Stan. That seems like a Stan move. That's hilarious, actually. But, I mean, you could also, have you guys, speaking again of Chaykin, have you guys read Hey Kids comics?
No, never.
No.
It's an image book that Howard Chaykin wrote, and it's a history of the comic book industry, and it's fascinating, and it's super gossipy, but he changed all the names around and amalgamated people just so it's like you have to put two and two together to figure out who everybody is. He has enough of a key guide to the characters at the beginning to where it's not too, as long as you know your basic comic book history, you know who these people are. And I know some people who are still alive, he called and said, I'm going to tell this story. Is that okay? But it's fascinating because it goes from the inception of comics being created to right up to 2004, I want to say. Even though it just came out, I know he's working on a sequel. But it's the best thing I think he's done in a long, long time. Really
well, it
enjoyable.
sounds similar to Adrian Tomin's work. Adrian Tomin, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. His latest book, there's like a real expose of like working in comics. Tomin. Because there's a big thing in the book of everyone mispronouncing his name, so I'm really careful to. I don't know how to pronounce his name. All I know is all of the ways that it's mispronounced in the book. But
it's Tomine. It's Tomine.
Tomine, right? Okay. I'll remember that for
Yeah.
future. But
That's
yeah,
funny
it's a
'cause I was
similar
just I was just talking with somebody yesterday about what he'd been up to. I thought I'd heard he came out with a new book. I would have guessed it was about working in the industry, though. Wow,
yeah, it's
I gotta
really
read
good.
that.
It's really, really good. It's
Yeah, I
there's a lot
bet.
of there's some really good Frank Miller stuff in there.
Ooh.
Really? Wait, so is it like autobiographical? In other words, is it from his point of view, or is it him doing kind of a fictional version of all that stuff?
I'm pretty sure it's
That's something
entirely.
I never.
Yeah, I think it's completely autobiographical. It's like he for most of the names he'll like block them out.
Wow. Yeah,
Like he like blanks
but
them
you can
out, and
still
he
tell it's Frank Miller.
the Frank Miller one he
Oh,
doesn't block out
Frank.
because he literally draws him. He's like hosting like a presentation thing, and it's like you can't draw Frank Miller and not
Yeah.
have everyone know that that's Frank Miller. Like you get the hat in there, and you're already like. But yeah, it's not too
Oh,
like it's not too harsh on Frank Miller. It's just like a funny little
that's good.
anecdote. And I think it's
Yeah.
something that's like probably public record, the story he does with Frank Miller. So like doesn't really matter too much. And it's just a funny little
Yeah.
it's just based on his name really. On
Oh, I'll
on the
have to read that.
pronunciation of his name.
I'm curious
But
what
it's
that is that
really
he's
good.
talking about.
And the way he did it is
That's
so good. Like
funny.
the way he printed it out as like a moleskin book. Ooh. He like
Oh,
did it
did
as
he?
like a lined moleskin book that you
Wow.
buy that he's drawn as a comic and like printed out in that format. It's really, really cool to like own as a physical
Almost like
copy.
a sketchbook.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's really, really good.
Wow, that's fantastic. I can't wait to read that.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a little it's not it's definitely not as well, it might be slightly his intention. It's a little depressing if you're trying to work in comics. Because it doesn't always paint it in a very good light. In fact, for the most part, it paints it in a pretty unpleasant light. But I mean, it certainly didn't stop me from wanting
That's
to
too
make
bad.
work.
Yeah, that's too bad because Tomine is one of the more successful guys as far as that goes. So you'd think that he would have a good story to tell, or a positive story
Yeah,
to
I
tell as
mean,
far as that goes.
he manages to
But I'd have
work
to
it
read
into
it.
a way that is really it's very inspirational, especially by the end. And it's kind of just I think a part of it. I don't want to spoil it too much, but by the end, the vibe of it is that he's done like he's had an incredible job, and he's really lucky to have been as successful as he is, but also he's got like a family life that he really likes and stuff like that. So it's just very inspirational and very uplifting.
Wow.
I really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's cool. Who published it? Did he publish it himself? Do you know?
I think he published it himself. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to say off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's published by him. He published it himself. But it was like a big thing where he wanted to do like a big printing and but then during COVID, like he couldn't really go out and do all the signings and stuff.
Yeah.
So I like ordered it the day it came out.
Wow.
It sounds like it would be a
just finally
fantastic
arrived
book.
in the mail or something.
Yeah, it's got that kind
of
vibe to it. Yeah, you know what? Maybe it is because he was with Drawn Quarterly for a while, wasn't
he? I think so. Sounds right.
Yeah, maybe he didn't self-publish. I really don't know.
He could probably get a really good book deal with just about any publisher. So he probably was, had it of wherever he wanted to take it.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I'm getting real deep into my Kirby dots right now.
Oh, let me zoom in then. Let me go to yours.
Nice. Yeah.
Let me see where we're at. So I've decided with the board, I said I was having issues with the board earlier. I've decided I'm just going to like mostly negative space it in. So I've got like no actual concrete lines of where it is right now. I'm just negative space.
That's what I was talking about earlier, the whiteout and the white shapes. Like that's what I'm trying to incorporate stuff where it's like, no, this thing is just white. It's not outlined.
Exactly.
And trying to make that super hard, but when it when it's done well, oh my god, it looks good. Because it just says like, hey, I know exactly what I'm doing here.
Yeah,
it's such a confident thing to do.
It's pretty much this talk is what has inspired me to do it. So it's interesting that while I was drawing it, you guys were talking about white out, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to implement that into it. That'll work.
Yeah, don't fear the whiteout.
Yeah, and it gets round the issue of like I was trying to draw it in one like line, and it's like this big fluid line, like it doesn't ever break up where the board ends. So I was like, how do I do that as one big line and not have it look terrible and wobbly? And it kind of fixes that once you get rid of all of the underdrawing. Like you can still have it be wobbly. Hang on, I drew a line there. You can still have it be.
Yeah, I'm really trying to do that by my rocks. Trying to go in and like just like some of the top lines here, I'm trying to go in and make them super thin or just delete them entirely to make it a little bit more impressionistic. Because the more I get into this stuff, the more I've learned that you do not have to draw everything. I feel like when I was younger, I drew the shit out of everything, and you don't have to do that. And that's also like for like interiors, it's a speed thing. It's like if you can imply something, I do that a lot with my backgrounds. I've looked at a lot of Sean Phillips stuff where like his backgrounds, if you really look at them, a lot of times they are not drawn. I don't want to say drawn well because he's an expert, he's a genius, but he doesn't really draw the backgrounds that much. There's a lot of black and there's a lot of lines.
Yeah,
but it's implying everything. You're supposed to look at the character, but he's implying it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've seen drawings of like cityscapes where somebody goes in and rules out every single line and every single window and every single light here and there. And I've seen other people who are able to do the implication of that really fast, and I certainly would not want to. I don't know.
Like Arthur Adams.
There's so many times that you labor over drawing this.
The shit of everything. And it looks so good. I love his stuff. It looks great. But I'm like, oh my God, how much work.
Yeah.
So much work.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have the patience to do that. I really don't. I like to draw things kind of as quickly as I can.
Yeah, I think that's where I fall under like the Mignola kind of style with my backgrounds of like, just like if you're not sure about it, and it would be loads and loads of work, it will probably look better in my style if I just do block shadow for the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Like, it makes it easier for the artist, and then it ends up, for me at least, looking a lot better.
Yeah.
This is a side note. You guys, I think I've got this guy here. You guys ever struggle with where to put a signature on a drawing like this?
Of course. Yeah.
I have no idea where to sign this thing.
I don't know.
I think I'm going to
sign
Happy Birthday Jack over here, but I want to sign. I usually sign as close as I can to the bottom right corner, but I'm thinking up here is going to be a better place for my signature for this drawing. But I think I'm going to write Happy Birthday Jack or Happy Birthday Kirby over here.
But you could have him saying it. You could have him saying it in a letter balloon.
Oh, I could. Shit, I could.
It's just
that's a good idea.
You could. How do you feel about that? Do you letter your own work usually? I can't remember.
I'm lettering Ray Gun Cowboy right now.
You are.
I'm using a lot of typefaces as much as I can. A lot of the I do a lot of like inner monologue stuff, and I try to do what like Mazzucchelli did, or not Mazzucchelli. I guess I don't actually know the letterist for Batman Year One offhand, but the lettering for the monologue of Bruce Wayne and Jim Gordon is like handwriting.
Yeah.
I try and do that with the different characters for Ray Gun Cowboy. And so that stuff I hand letter. I introduced a new character in this last issue that I didn't hand letter. My handwriting's I don't trust it enough. I guess I don't put that much work into it. But for the main like dialogue lettering, I am using a typeface called Back Issues. Just a standard comics typeface. But I do draw all of the bubbles myself because I like the sort of imperfect circles you can get. If I'll go into Photoshop and draw like an oval or a circle, and then I'll just draw around it freehand to give it that sort of imperfect look. Because I think it brings, specifically, to my art, I think it brings it alive. It meshes well because I'm not a clean artist. I like to do kind of messier work, and so having sort of a messier speech bubble, I think, works really well. Although I do like using fairly clean type because I don't want everything to be muddy. You know what I mean? And that's something I've worried about with my colors as well, because I do pretty muddy colors where I'm trying now to get away from like rendering with colors. I want to trust the drawing to do that. And I'll even have like background colors bleed into the characters. And I worry that that's maybe too much because of how sort of like messy and brushy my inking style can get. But we'll see what the feedback is to this next issue, or the issue that I put out yesterday, because it's the first issue where I feel like I've kind of like fully formed what this book is going to look like. I really like doing kind of painterly colors, but since this is kind of a sci-fi book, I tried to do more solid colors, but I'm kind of, and maybe it's a crutch, I'm kind of leaning back on this last issue a little bit more of that painterly look. There's a few more like washes in it of different colors, but it's one of those things, like if it works, I don't know why I'm trying to mess with it. Even if it does theoretically service the book, if it doesn't look good, I should throw it out. You know what I mean?
Sure. You're trying to keep it interesting for you, and you're learning and progressing, it sounds like. How much of it have you done now?
I've done 3 issues, and each of them is at most 10 pages. So they're really short.
So it's like short chapters
but,
in a sense.
Yeah, they're just kind of different little scenes or chapters of the story. But I've mentioned this to you guys before, but I'll say it again for the podcast. I really like that because this is sort of a book that I'm just using to kind of like stay in practice of doing sequentials until my next job comes up, which I've got a couple scripts that I'm reading right now that I'm kind of excited about that I could work on. But I just want to stay in practice, so I'm not taking the writing super seriously. I'm taking it seriously, but I'm not beating myself up if it doesn't work, because I really just want to draw at this point. But I want to keep it pretty
like that
so
Roald
that I
Dahl
can free myself up to change my mind. I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, what if it turns out like that Roald Dahl artist where it takes off and then you're stuck drawing it? Are you going to be happy? I'm you're drawing that stuff. Fun to you.
I actually thought about that too. I like to, with everything I do, I do kind of think about that. It's like, if I had to do this, forever, would I be happy with it? And like, these are, I'm actually using the main character as a character that I developed when I was like 13. It's definitely an evolution of that character, because he was sort of, I just, when I was 13, I just gotten into Spawn. So he started off as actually kind of a Spawn ripoff, and ended up being a gunslinger. This is one of the things I feel like for a long time I was holding on to these characters that I'd been developing since I was a teenager, that I sort of like held precious for a long time. And I was like, I don't need to treat them like they're precious, because I'll never make the book I wanted to make when I was 13, because it'd probably be really bad anyway. So I'm just going to use them now You know, because I could probably make a better story later. So for like practice right now and something to sort of put out just to show off what I'm doing, I'll go ahead and use these characters because I just have them, kind of waiting in the wings. And it's been a blast. It has been so much fun to play around in this world that I've kind of not even written down, but been thinking about since I was a kid. I've really enjoyed it. Like I said, the writing's probably not particularly good, but it's just something to keep me in practice. And it is. I am treating it like I'll learn a lesson from each issue. I've looked back on it and I'm like, okay, like the last issue, I hated the coloring, and so this issue, I fairly radically changed the way I colored it, and I'm a lot more happy with it. And so the next issue, it's probably going to be the inner monologue aspect. I wasn't very happy with it in this issue. So the next issue, if that's a thing that I can use, I'll work on that. And then, the dialogue or the drawing, the inking, whatever, I'm constantly with each issue. I want them to look fairly different because it is just like a learning tool that I've kind of challenged myself to make. But it has been so much fun.
Yeah. I think though that I think that's a tradition though, like Spawn and Youngblood and a whole bunch of these other characters had the same genesis where it's like a character that they came up with when they were young, and then they just pulled him off the shelf and were like, well, I'm going to do my own thing. I always liked this guy, so I think it's there's a tradition there in a sense.
Yeah, and I knew like Spawn was a character that Todd McFarlane had like when he was a teenager. And I mean back in those days, I feel like those guys all started working when they were teenagers. So
that's true.
But I looked back actually at some sketchbooks I had when I was in middle school or even in high school, where I did little stories with these characters, and oh my God, some of them are so dark. On a future episode, I'll have to break them out and show everyone. There was a scene that I found. It's completely out of context. It's like the main character is named Sully. He like goes to jail, which is something I'd like to play around with in the book I'm writing now. And it's like this. He beats these guys up because they want to like take advantage of him, like in the shower or something. And I'm like, dude, I was 13 when I wrote this. What the hell?
Well, that's when you're trying to be edgy, right?
You guys wrestling, and I'm like, what the fuck, dude?
What's going on there?
Yeah, I have no idea.
That's heavy shit. Huh. Interesting.
I'd probably watching like Oz or something on HBO.
Yeah, or like American History
Yeah,
X. I can see that just being like, I just want to be. When you're younger, you want to be like edgy and cool.
Yeah. That's more interesting than what I would have come up with at that age.
But I see at that age in like school, I was very like, I would just do loads of drawings that I would like, oh yeah, cover that in blood, make it really horrible because that's what's cool. That's what's adult, That's what a grown-up would draw.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, at that age, I just discovered the Spawn comics, and I started watching. Going back to HBO, I just started watching the Spawn cartoon on HBO, and I was like, "This is the way to do it. Make everything bleed. Everyone kills everyone." And even the character design. Now he's just kind of a cowboy that wears like a poncho, cape kind of thing. Back then, like he was like a gray and red Spawn. Like that's what he was when I was drawing him when I was 13. And it was sort of like a thing. I had to do that when I was 13 to get to where I am now. But yeah, I ripped everyone off at that age.
I think everybody does that for a long time. Like even I struggle a lot of times where I'm like, oh, this is a great idea for a character. And then you're like, it's pretty much the same as, Blue Beetle or something. Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Every one of my drawings as a kid was just a rip off of something. Similarly, mostly Spawn.
Yeah, I thought I created
I
the
didn't know about
zombie
it.
genre when I was in high school. I was in biology class and we were talking about viruses, and I was like, man, that'd be a great idea for a story if a virus would like, because we were talking about viruses and parasites that would take over the host's mind, and I was like, oh my god, it'd be such a good idea. And I'm sitting there in class, and as I'm having this idea, I was like, oh, that's zombies. Oh, okay, all right. Well,
Someone
I'm
already did
14.
Yeah.
That's like, oh wait,
Totally.
that's just zombies. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
there's
have
a lot of that
a
as a
Truth
teenager.
is stranger than fiction.
character that I don't think I've quite seen done to the same degree. Who I'm kind of reserved. I've drawn him a couple times, but I mean, I'll explain it to you. It's a psychedelic. This is the main pitch, the elevator pitch. It's a psychedelic, trippy detective noir superhero story, and it takes place in a world that's almost like half Looney Tunes, half superhero universe. And the main character
Wow.
is a superhero or washed up superhero turned private eye named Duck Bill, who's a guy literally wearing a duck costume. And
Wow.
That's like the most original idea I've ever had in my life. But even still, there's so many elements of
Yeah.
like when I visualize it in my head, I'm like, oh well, that's kind of like Happy, or oh that's a little bit like Deadpool,
Right.
or oh that's a little bit like The Spirit, you know?
There's worse influences, but man, it certainly didn't sound like anything I've ever heard of when you described it.
Well, now
That's
it's on the
great.
internet unless I edit it
He
out.
dressed
So
like a duck.
yeah, he's the premise
Yeah.
is that when he was a young superhero, um, he went out and
Uh-huh.
didn't have a costume, and his first caper ended in a Halloween store, and the news and the police and everybody showed up at this scene where he had apprehended a criminal, and so he threw on a costume quick just to like not reveal his secret identity, and it
Oh,
stuck.
wow.
I like that, man. I like that a lot.
Actually,
Yeah, that's good.
That's an original.
Yeah, I'll send you guys some pictures. I've like he's like this. He's not even a real character.
Yeah.
I've never drawn him, but I've doodled him. Like he's a thumbnail or a warm up that I do from time to time. Where I'm like, oh, it's a Duck Bill kind of day, and I'll doodle him out.
His name is
Duck Bill
there you
kinda
go.
Bill.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
his
how
name
the
is
Teenage
Duck-
Mutant Ninja
Duck Bill is
Turtles
his
Right.
superhero name. Yeah.
Fuck, that's good, dude.
are. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty. You should definitely do something with that.
Yeah,
whatever
I've been
you're
playing around with it
doing
being my next.
Drop the art. Drop the writer you're working with now. Work on Duck Bill.
That's my plan. Is if nothing comes up directly after my current project, I'm gonna make that into a pitch. At least what we're doing with our Kickstarter comic is essentially we're formulating a typical comic book pitch, like 5 to 6 pages, lettered, colored, all of that jazz, full creative team assembled, elevator pitch, all that stuff. I'll probably do that with this character for my next project. And whether or not if this Kickstarter project's successful, maybe I'll do it through Kickstarter, or if the opportunity arises where I have a foot in the door with a publisher, maybe I'll pitch it there. But who knows?
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot, man.
Yeah, I would read Duck Bill for sure.
Yeah.
Bill, Duck Bill.
Yeah, I'll send you guys when we're not on the call. I'll give you guys some details about what the pitch was for the first volume. But it's fun. It would just be like traditional
sick.
superhero tropes with Looney Tunes reality warping physics and kind of like a trippier art style.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's an artist. Oh, I'll have to send you guys when I send you these images. So anybody watching this right now who's being left out from me sharing Duck Bill with the world, you'll see him at some point. But for you guys, I'll send you guys all the like development stuff I had like in my head for this character. I even
Are
made
you
a-
guys
Great.
into?
Can't wait.
We've talked about this a little bit already. Are you guys into like sillier comics? Like we talked about like comedies and stuff. I want to get what I'm doing. Ray Gun Cowboy. It's a dramatic, pretty serious comic. I want to get back into more comedy and do like a goofier comic because I mentioned it to you guys before, but I'll say it again. I started as a political cartoonist, and so it's all jokes, and I want to get back to those roots a little bit. And after Ray Gun, maybe do kind of like just a sillier comic. You said Looney Tunes before, and I really enjoyed whatever opinions anybody has about Tom King's Batman run. I really enjoyed the Elmer Fudd Batman noir story.
Oh yeah, it's great. Yeah,
you guys read that? Yeah, it's ridiculous, and I love it. I want to do not necessarily even something like that, but something that like even maybe presents itself as serious, but just is satirically goofy throughout. But I feel like honestly, like you have to be like a better writer to do comedy in a lot of ways. You have to be a very, very talented writer to pull off that kind of material.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to what we were saying before about like horror. Those are two genres where you have to really, it doesn't come easy.
Yeah, like a stand-up comic doesn't go on stage and nobody laughs and then everybody's like, "That was great." Like if you have to, there's that immediate gauge of like whether it works or not, and there's really dumb comedy, but like I'm a gigantic Seinfeld fan. I don't know if you guys like Seinfeld, but I think Seinfeld's up better now than. I loved it at the time, but now I really love it, and I'm fascinated by the mechanics of it and how deft the storytelling is in it. And it's for me one of my epitomes of comic storytelling. I love comedy. I love Cowboy Wally Show by Kyle Baker is one of my all-time favorite comics. If you guys ever heard of that?
No, I've never heard of that.
No.
Oh man. Do you guys know who Kyle Baker is?
The name sounds familiar. What has he done? Anything else?
He did. Yeah, he did mainstream stuff he started out at Marvel. I think he was a student at the time, and then he would come in and ink. And he was one of those guys that was kind of that good that he could come in and just get some inking work while he was going to school. But he had a kind of a Mignola Sienkiewicz style in a sense, but he also had this very cartoony. He's also really funny, and he did this graphic novel that's kind of like the cult classic graphic novel that not necessarily many people know about a drunk cowboy that makes really bad movies called The Cowboy Wally Show, and it's super funny, and it's still one of my favorite things ever. And and basically it's shot like a documentary where he's getting interviewed and they're looking back on his career. And I want to say it was starting out, he was going to do it like each page was like a one-page thing that was going to maybe be in a newspaper or something. So that's kind of how the gags work. But eventually it didn't pan out that way, so he turned it into a graphic novel. And I don't know who published it. I think DC eventually reprinted it at some point. But it's nutty. It's super fun. Like he had all these really bad movies, like the Cowboy Wally Shoot 'em Up Laugh Riot, and he had some Godzilla movie he made that was called Ed Smith Lizard of Doom. He couldn't stay out of the shot, so it's like Godzilla destroying the city and Cowboy Wally's in the corner, and he's like, I'm on camera. It was a lot like Benny Hill, actually. It was kind of a Benny Hill quality to him. But I just thought that was it was so funny, and it was like so out of nowhere, and nobody's doing anything like that back then. I still don't know if anybody does anything like that now. But I'd love to do at least one comedy like that. I have a story that called "Forget the Ham and Cheese." I'm worried about my life that I'd like to do. Yeah, and it's a parody of it's a parody of a. You guys ever seen the film With Nail and I?
Yeah.
It's a British film. It's like that crossed with like Mommy Dearest and a few other things.
That sounds good.
Based on some crazy friends that I have.
I think with comedy.
But yeah, I'd love to. Huh?
Oh, I was gonna say, I think Todd, you really hit the nail with the hammer on how difficult comedy is in especially comics, because
Yeah.
with a comedian, like you said, like you get that instant
Yeah.
response of yay or nay, did they like it or did they not? But with comics, no one really does comedy one
Yeah.
shots. They do either short form or it has to be like a full comedic graphic novel, you know? There's a book I actually have
Yeah.
from Image called Naked Bear Fighter or Shirtless Bear Fighter. Forgetting
Oh,
exactly
yeah.
what it's titled.
Oh yeah.
And for
That's
anybody who's
awesome.
watching who doesn't know it, it's like a riff of 80s action movies. But the main character is this
Yeah.
ridiculous Tarzan like lumberjack. And
Yeah,
I
he's
think
like a
that's
lumberjack kind of guy, right?
yeah. I think that's a prime example of how in modern comics it's really difficult to do comedy um, in in the comic book format unless you're doing it with a long format story or like a really short gag skit type
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. Well, it's got to have a punchline. So it's got a even more of a rhythm maybe than any other form of cartooning, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Or it's there's probably no newspaper strips that have the punchline at the beginning in the first panel. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I doubt it. But I'd like to do like situational comedy. Like I think that would be fun to do just to see if it would work. But yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Axe Cop seems like another example. Um, that's a comedy, right? Have you guys seen Axe Cop?
I remember when it was being advertised, but I don't think I ever saw it.
This
It's written
podcast
by
is
like
going
a
to turn into like
5-year-old.
Todd's on what you should watch and read.
It's on recommendations.
Teacher
Yeah.
Todd.
Sorry.
Yeah. Teacher Todd, I like that. Teacher Todd.
No.
I feel like this whole show, he's been like, "Do you guys know about this?" And we're like, "We'll check it out."
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no. I'll
Don't
for
need to
sure
be
check
that way.
No, please be that way. Please be that way.
Yeah, teach us your ways.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if it's annoying, don't stop me.
No, you're keeping the conversation going.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
No, I mean we're
right.
definitely here to like learn from you. I feel like you have more experience, in this field than the rest of us.
Yeah.
At least from my angle, you know more people than I do, and that's definitely something I'm
Yeah.
eager to
Yeah.
hear more about. About your journey and
Yeah.
and what this job and this lifestyle really has meant to you and what it
Yeah.
means for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'll encapsulate that real quickly since maybe anybody watching this doesn't know what you mean by that. So I'm older than the other three guys here, and I've had some ins and outs where I've tried to get into comics and thought it was going to turn out one way, and then it didn't. Then I had a detour. I've had lots of detours. I had a detour into animation. Then I got back into comics, and it was almost like it always was different than I expected it to be. And so, long story short, about a couple of years back, I was almost gave up and decided maybe I just didn't have it. And I retrained myself to draw almost from the top down, and really surprised when some things worked. And so I would say for me, like it was already going in a direction I was finally happy with, as opposed to I could draw, but it was like dragging nails across a chalkboard. I could do it, but it was a grind, and I never really was. I was insecure about showing it to people. But then I started doing work that I was finally happy with, and it felt good to do it, and I felt good about it, and I went digital, which seemed like the final capper. And so in a sense, I've reinvented myself, and I'm excited to sort of reemerge both through with things like this and with the comic, because I'm really excited, because people have no idea, I'm sure, who I am. But yeah, I've got a lot more to say about that. But that's so I feel like I've learned a lot, both about drawing, and I love like the history of the medium, and have lots of opinions about that kind of stuff. Not all of them are just my opinion, of course. But I love talking about it. So it's great to finally, connect with folks and talk about this stuff. So otherwise, I just like talk to a sock puppet in my room.
Well, that's something I think we've touched on
But I tend
before.
to go backwards. Like what's that?
Oh, I was just gonna say that's something we've touched on before about how the four of us, and maybe not all of us, but there's something about talking to people that, like, you throw out names like, you say Mazzucchelli, and the four of us know who Mazzucchelli is, and that's nice, because I like to talk to my family and friends about what I do, and I'll throw out names like, oh, have you seen what this guy did? You see the new, Lee Weeks Batman?
Yeah. It's hard.
That character, like, I have no. What are you talking about? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's nice to have this format to discuss things with people that know what's going on. And the listeners, if you're here, you know who these people are, and if you don't, you should definitely look them up. We're all like-minded people in a similar place, and it's just really nice to have that community.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's one thing that it really inspired this to happen, was seeing how in the big leagues, in the professionals, how much of there is a community. There's a group of like-minded individuals who truly try to support each other as much as they can, and are just nerds about a craft, and just to have that was something I truly envied from what I was seeing online. So I'm really glad we were all able to come together for this. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, same.
And have you guys watched the original Drink and Draw with Dave Johnson and some of those other guys? I forget all the names. Dan Panosian. And I don't know. I would certainly watch those in preparation for this. That's a lot of fun to watch.
That's probably the show you really want to watch. If you're watching this, that's the show you want to watch, but please keep watching this one.
Yeah, this is the show you watch when they're out of episodes.
Yes. Yes.
Well, the difference though too is that I think maybe not today, but we'll eventually talk more about process. But the original Drink or Draw that I've watched so far is more of they bring on a special guest, and it takes on more of an interview style, at least that I've seen. And
so
it's great.
next week we're gonna have Mignola, right?
Watch the draw.
Yeah, you set that up, right, Johnny?
What's that?
Yeah, I'm working on it at the moment.
You never know.
I'll reach out to him and he'll be like, "Are you that kid who grabbed my shoulder that one time?" And I'll be like, "No, I've never been to New York."
Yeah. People can't go to shows right now, so they might be more open to it than they would have been otherwise. You never know.
It's actually not a bad idea. Like Todd just said, people are do comments constantly are looking for platforms right now, and this is a good one. We're drawing, we're having a good time, we're chatting. I mean, this is as good as it gets when it comes to comics. You're not gonna you're not gonna get better than this right here. Congratulations.
You peaked. The internet has peaked right here.
Sold me.
No, the
It only gets worse.
yeah, it's all downhill from here, people.
I'm just kidding. That's
Um,
right.
One thing that is cool though is
Every time I see a kid crying. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, what were you saying?
Every time I see a kid crying, I have to keep myself from saying this. Where I want to be like, "Don't worry, kid. It only gets worse from here on out." Because I think it's funny, but I know that I don't want to like give him shit. But I'm like, man, you think you're crying now? Just wait till you're older.
Wait till debt kicks in.
Yeah. Don't life is good. Don't listen to me.
Yeah, life is good, man. We're drawing superheroes. We're chatting. You know, this is
Totally.
this really is. I mean, this is good. This is good stuff right here. I mean,
don't know,
how
I'm
in the
jealous
world
of
is
Johnny for having seen
profession?
Tenet, but
Yeah.
Yeah, a little mad about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone. It was real good. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, a little mad. Not super bitter, but a little mad.
Yeah, how
It's
was
fine.
it?
sorry, we'll get over it.
Yeah, it was really, really good. I liked it a lot. I was pretty confused throughout, probably because I'm an idiot. But it like jumps right into it as well. I was expecting it to kind of ease you in, like kind of like Inception, and like explain the concept, but like
Yeah.
it's just straight in and all go. And I was not quite ready for it in the beginning.
That's interesting.
Yeah, really, really good though.
Huh.
Really.
Yeah, that it's never going to come out in the United States. Fun fact: it's never going to come out here.
Is it never?
There's never going to be another movie. Johnny, you're going to get to see the Batman, and we'll just have to ask you to, interpret what that movie is like. It's never gonna happen here.
Once I see it, I'll just no
As
matter
long
what
as you
topic
get
we
me a
choose
copy
to
of the new
draw.
Bond movie, I don't care.
I don't even know if I'll be watching it. If the Batman's out, I'll just be watching that over and over again, to be honest. I'm just gonna, I think every week, no matter what we choose as the thing we draw, I'm just gonna draw stuff from that to try and show you guys what it's like. That'll be my
Each
way of
week you
bringing
draw
it to the
one
States.
panel or one frame.
Yeah, that's
Eat
how
it
I'll
up,
bring it to you. And then eventually we'll get
funny
sued.
Because I you guys know I'm a James Bond fanatic. Have I mentioned that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's the movie I care about, which doesn't mean it's going to be good. I'm actually a little worried about it, but until it comes out and is terrible, I'm going to believe the best. But what I'd forgotten about, and now it makes me more interested in Tenet, is that I know what was his other movie with Leonardo DiCaprio? I'm
Inception.
blank.
Inception.
Inception. Inception was his way of making a Bond movie. That's all a Bond tribute.
Oh yeah. I've seen reviewers say the same thing about Tenet.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because does it take place in the same universe? That's what I've heard. Or should I not ask these questions?
It's definitely not confirmed.
I've heard that before. That it's vaguely
definitely not confirmed.
In the same Inception world.
I like how Johnny just skirted that question, having been the one who's seen it. Yeah. He's like,
No,
I'm trying to protect my feelings. I appreciate that.
He really doesn't address it at all. There's no like hint that it is. It's got a similar vibe for sure, and it's very James Bondy.
Yeah, that's probably a very.
Now he's got me. Leonardo DiCaprio is in this movie as.
You heard it here first, folks. Cobb shows up in Tenet.
Cobb, yeah. Yeah, Tom Hardy's in it. The whole gang.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy as Bane is actually in it. It's pretty crazy.
Bane is in the movie.
You know what? You heard
what's
it here
going on with the time travel?
He's not wearing the mask, but he does the same voice.
Yeah, I don't know
How
what
does
this
it
movie
compare
is,
to
guys.
Nolan's other movies?
Wait, what was
Do you have
that?
do you have a place like? Is it as good? Where does it place as far as Nolan's movies? Do you have a ranking of it? In other words, like, is it as good as Inception, or and once again, should I be asking these questions, or do I not want to know?
It's still a little fresh. My first thought when it ended was that it's like Christopher Nolan's most Christopher Nolan-y movie. It's like really, because he always likes to like mess around with time, and this is where he really does that. So yeah, it felt to me like his most like, yeah, and it also has all of the like, blah, it has loads of that. He goes mad on that, so he just is really Christopher Nolan-y.
You know, that's what we all go to the movies for, is to hear that. Wah.
Yeah. All you want is the blah. Well, there's a lot of it. Don't worry.
It's like ASMR. You go to sleep to it every night.
Because I didn't
Yeah.
I didn't care for Interstellar. Like, I actually got really bored and couldn't wait for it to end. And maybe I didn't give it a fair chance. I'm not sure.
I've heard that, but I really liked Interstellar. I don't know whether that was just me, but I really liked it.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Interstellar as well.
To me, it's not as good to me as Inception or The Prestige, which I would consider to be super Nolan-y films. I enjoyed Interstellar for sure. Definitely a good watch. But The Prestige and Inception for me are the Nolan films. Outside of, obviously, I like the Batman movies. We're doing a comics show, and of course, those movies are my favorite Nolan movies.
Yeah.
But to be a film buff, real quick, the best Nolan movies are The Prestige and Inception. Even though it's The Dark Knight, but
Prestige is honestly it's in my top 5 favorite movies of all time.
it's
one
so
of the first
good.
movies I always show people.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, I like The Prestige.
I mean, it's got Wolverine. It's
I
got
don't know
Batman.
if I've seen it.
Yeah.
How did I miss that?
Yeah, David Bowie.
Wow,
Bowie's in that movie.
Oh, Bowie! Yeah, Bowie is actually phenomenal in that movie. Like you
He's
tend to
good.
think, yeah, he's awesome.
Wow. No shit. I'm gonna have to get caught up on that one.
I think I heard somewhere that he didn't want to do it if he couldn't get Bowie for Tesla in that movie. Like, he just straight up would have called off the film.
I love that.
I think that's the only practical move.
Bowie's
if you
a great
can't
actor.
get David Bowie to get in on your project, it's
That's
Just
why
write it off.
That's why I haven't made a movie yet, because Bowie died. That was
Yeah.
It's why we didn't start the podcast until this point.
Take my money, Warner Brothers, Sony, all of them. They were like, "Here, we want you to make a movie," and I was like, "I can't get Bowie." So, sorry guys. It's too bad. It's too bad. I'm not gonna do a hologram. It's not too hot.
Not my fault.
You know.
See, Bowie is my first and last choice for Joker. That's always who I would base him on. Is an
like that a
interpretation
lot.
of Bowie.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that a
People
lot.
have been playing about with that. I read, what did I read recently? I read something where he has like different colored eyes. Like he has
Batman
that,
White
whatever
Knight.
that's called.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's very Bowie, I think.
Wait, you mean the Joker has different colored eyes in the comics now?
No,
it's
he
an
has
Elseworld.
like in. Yeah, you're right. It's White Knight. He's got like he's got that whatever they call the thing where both of your eyes are different colors. Like he's got green and purple eyes, right? Yeah,
Like-
which was a nice little.
Like Chromia or whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's something like that.
wouldn't do
And
that.
Bowie had that, and I think it was a bit of a
he
nod
did.
because a lot of artists have like based the Joker on Bowie. I think.
I honestly, there for a while, I drew the Joker to look like Beethoven. I don't know why, but I was like, Beethoven would make a killer Joker. I drew him
I
with
like
like the weird, like bushy hair. I don't know why I did it, but I was like, he for some reason would be a composer, and it's Beethoven. I don't know. There's a few
I like
drawings.
that.
There's probably on my Instagram
Are you
of
serious?
Beethoven Joker.
Have you guys
Wow.
have you read the Paul Pope story with like, it's like a Robin story, and the Joker appears in it, and he bases it off of like Cesar Romero's Joker.
I've
You guys
seen the
read that?
artwork from
And
it.
it like, yeah, he really makes like,
Where he's
it
got the
looks
mustache.
just like Cesar
Under the
Romero's
makeup.
Joker, but it's and it's like terrifying. It's really scary.
I mean, it's a fantastic Joker
Wow.
design that they had in that movie. Aside from that he wouldn't shave his mustache, it is a fantastic Joker design from the
Yeah,
West. It really is, you know.
I think including not shaving his mustache,
I think that's
it
what makes
adds a
the
weird element to it.
yeah. What makes it weird is the Paul Pope illustration really highlights it. Is like who puts makeup over the mustache? That's where it's
Yeah,
weird.
what kind of a?
Yeah.
That's where he's twisted. That's how
Sounds
he's
like something Paul
kooky and
Pope would do.
twisted. I think
Awesome.
I'm my rendition of the Joker would have a full beard that he has just put white makeup over the whole thing, just slicked it
Ugh.
down over his face.
You're giving me goosebumps.
It's creepy, right? There we go. That's what they need to be going for in the Joker movies. Joaquin should have just grown out a beard.
And he had a killer beard.
There's an
You
old
know?
He did.
Joker.
He did. He should have just kept it and just slicked over it white. Would look so
platform
weird.
way.
We gotta do a Joker episode. Who would your Joker look like? The Ink Drink Think episode
Absolutely.
about Joker.
That's a good one. That's a good poll. We could even do that
Yeah, I
next week.
cannot answer that yet.
If we're not pushing off
Yeah.
Spider-Man, we could do that next week.
I'm up for that.
I think that's a good one too. If only,
You guys want to do Joker?
yeah, Joker's cool with me.
Yep, I'm up for that.
Yeah.
I've also only ever drawn the
Always fun
Joker
to
the
draw
one
Joker.
time in my recent Constantine drawing. That's the only time I've ever actually drawn the character. So I think it might be needed to give it a second chance.
I have one actually. Shit, I'll show it actually. I got
Yeah.
one that I did for the fandom that I can't release on Instagram yet, but I can release on this for sure. Where are we?
You can't.
Not
Why
yet
can't
on
you release it
Instagram,
on
but I can show you
Instagram?
guys
Because
on
it's
this.
part of
They like asked
is it a
not
contest? Is that what's
to. Yeah, it's a contest, so they were like, please
That's
leave
weird.
it until they announce it to show it on stuff. But here it is. Ooh.
Oh, that's creepy.
Oh man.
Yeah, I wanted to go like super,
Yeah, wow.
like real gummy. Get his gums in there for sure.
Yeah.
Dude, dude, I'm a huge fan of yours. Oh my god. I'm a
Oh man,
huge
thank you.
fan of yours.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll get back to it.
And he's got the
Like
knife
I
from
could
the
dude, I
Dark
could
Knight.
go about your stuff. Your stuff's so good, dude.
Oh, thank you, man.
Yeah,
I
Johnny.
appreciate that.
When I came across your page, I don't know if you followed me or if I followed you or what had happened first, but honestly, like your stuff's phenomenal.
Oh man, thank you. That was very flattering. Yeah, I don't remember which one of us followed the other one first. I do remember I saw your work and was like, oh shit, this guy's. Do you guys get that? Like sometimes people follow you and they're like, okay, I appreciate that, thank you. And then sometimes you like go on their page and you're like, oh man, this actually means something. This person's really, really good. And yours was definitely one of those. I like same with Nate and Todd. I looked at the work and was like, oh, actually, this person's not just nobody. This person's got something.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can always tell, I think, when somebody's got like a real vision for what they're drawing rather than doing like fan art for something. And I don't want to just shit on anybody because fan art's cool. But there are real artists and there are people who do it because they like comic art. And I mean, of course, I'm speaking as a comic art fan, of course, but there are people making real choices, and I think all of you guys are making real choices with your stuff. You know, I think we have 4 very unique looks here on the podcast, which is really cool. But yeah, like you said, Johnny, sometimes you get a following, you're like, hey, thank you. Hey, I'm glad you like it. And sometimes you're like, holy shit, that's following me. Like I must be doing something right is how as narcissistically how I kind of look at it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you're right. It is down to like making choices rather than just like it can be as simple as what we were just talking about, like thinking about what would your Joker look like, what would you base it off of, like choices like that, which is like quite a basic thing. But as opposed to just doing fan art of the Joker you've seen, being like, what would my rendition of that look like, is just the simple level of like choices that you make, I think, that make it something different, like sets it apart, or can do anyway.
Yeah, because I've worried about that a lot.
like seeing
Is my Instagram account a fan art account? You know, I've worried about that a bunch.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, because like I draw Superman a lot, and I don't draw Superman for DC Comics. I don't draw Action Comics, and so I'm like, it is really doing this. You know, that's something that crosses my mind because I'm not, you know, as well established as I'd like to be at this point.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you guys deal with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's something
Well,
I
you're
always,
working on
and I quite.
So
Yeah, I think you have that.
You're doing continuity, so
right. Yeah, and I appreciate that. I don't post as much as I should about like my process or my pages. Do you guys know who his Instagram handle is? Nimbus Black. His name's Lamar.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a buddy of mine, an Instagram friend, I should say, even though he's just down the road. And he just bombards Instagram constantly with his process, and I kind of love that approach of like taking the curtain down, like this is what I'm doing. These are the inks, these are the pencils, these are the colors. And he's been doing. If you guys haven't looked at his page lately, he's been doing a lot of interviews with some pretty notable artists that are fantastic, like one-on-one interviews. Yeah, he does them like he puts them like on his Instagram TV,
Instagram
like feed.
Wow, that's cool. I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, he's got a lot of really good interviews, you know, and some of them with, you know, people that are sort of like similarly, you know, like he is kind of trying to break in. He's done a lot of like, I would consider his work and our work pretty similar because he's I think still trying to break in, but he is sort of like doing this giant epic right now.
You should have him on.
Yeah, I'd love to reach out to him to see if he would do an episode, because he's definitely a smart guy. But he's got some real notable people on his show to interview, and I'd honestly be curious to see how he has gotten those people to do the show. Not that he's not a talent that could bring those people in, but he's gotten some pretty noteworthy people. I can't think of anybody offhand, but every once in a while I look at his feed and I'm like, holy shit, you got that guy. Like, wow. But he also draws in a similar style. I think he really lays down the inks, like you and I, like you guys and myself do. And like I said, he's in a similar place. He's breaking in the industry. Yeah, apparently he's good at getting people to join in. Yeah, definitely a good dude. He's always been kind to me. We've spoken on several different occasions about work, and I'm a fan of his. I think he's a fan of mine. But yeah, I'd love to get him on. That's awesome. One of these, see if he's interested.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I think you would provide a unique perspective as well to just like workflow wise and how to break in and how to network and all that stuff, because at least from my point of view, he's better at it than I am. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys familiar with Dan Ekus? Have you ever seen his videos?
No,
I can't say that I have.
He actually has a pretty big following online. He has a Webtoons comic called Odyssey Inc., and it's an adventure pulp style comic. And he also has a pretty big YouTube channel where he does interviews and conversations about how to operate as a professional business in comics, like how to be an entrepreneur in comics, like how to make money from commissions and whatnot. But he and I have had a couple of exchanges on Instagram, and we follow each other. But he's somebody as well who would be a really great get for an episode, just to see kind of what advice he might have, but also just to have another person to mingle with and network, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's his
There's
name again?
a few names offhand that I can think of that would be really good. As far as just like people that are in a similar place to all of us. Do you guys follow Tyler Bentz at all on Instagram? Just to shout out another person. I don't want to just plug everyone that I know on this podcast, but
I don't think I do.
Tyler Bentz. You guys should look him up. He does like Paul Pope is one of his biggest inspirations. I would think just by looking at his work. But also he's like Paul Pope with shoot, what's the guy's name that just did Raphael Grandpa?
Oh yeah.
Or he does like he does the most minute hatching to render his drawings, and it's incredible. He recently did like surprisingly, I didn't even know this was a thing, but like a Chex Mix comic that was really good. He developed characters for
like
Chex Mix based on different ingredients for the snack Chex Mix.
Wow.
And that dude, he's a good guy. Like I said, I'm a fan of his. I think he's a fan of mine, and really good guy that I think could provide a unique perspective on. He's represented now by Inky Knuckles art.
Oh wow!
Oh really?
Yeah. He's doing really, really well. He's in it. I think he's in Atlanta, if I remember correctly, Atlanta, Georgia.
What's his name again?
Tyler Bentz.
I think I might have seen him on there.
Yeah.
I sent an embarrassing message to Inky Knuckles before I really knew how big it was. I sent him a message like, "Hey, can I get on? This seems like a pretty cool thing you guys are running." And then I like looked into it more, and I was like, "Oh shit, these are like some of the best." And I've just messaged them to be like, "Hey, you guys could probably use my skills."
Johnny, I did the same thing.
Did you, man?
Yeah, I reached out a couple months ago when I was first putting out like sample pages and stuff, and I was like, "Hey, I see you guys handle commissions. Like, I'd love to get in on that."
Yes, man. I did.
Like an idiot.
It's so embarrassing. Just to hit up some like massive thing and be like, "Hey, yeah, you guys, you know what? I don't know if you're interested, but my work's pretty good. You should get in on it." I think I'm pretty much done. Yeah, exactly. Soon they'll be just wishing. Yeah, I'm done. I think.
All right, here
I'll be ready to post that.
I'll zoom in on your feed if you want to share the camera. Holy cow!
Yeah, you know what? I'll take it off of this stand and I'll just
wow,
dude,
put it up. You see that, all right?
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thanks, guys.
Have fun coloring.
So yeah, pretty happy with my job.
Get the fuck out of here, buddy.
That was a tough one. I'm real happy that I went with the negative space
That's
for the Surfer's board. Like ending it there, I was real happy with.
That's so sharp. That's like Michael Avon Oeming right there.
Wow.
In that simplicity. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty happy with that one. So I'll post that whenever. And then I finished up with some, again, like that whiteout kind of effect of like, I finished up with a bunch of highlights in the black for the Surfer to just get that like shine.
Again, Charles Burns, Mignola. Yeah.
That's great. Johnny's not invited to the next podcast, by the way. I'm making that executive decision.
What was your
Johnny's not invited.
What are you saying? What was it again?
Johnny's not invited to the next podcast.
Well, I haven't seen you guys yet.
Kicked off the island.
I'm
To stop
sorry.
replying to his texts.
Get out of here, dude.
Hey guys, you haven't been
gonna
active in
go
the Instagram chat.
Well,
Blocked, man. You're blocked.
I haven't seen what you guys have done yet, so I've just been drawing away at mine and haven't had a chance to look at the screen. So hang on, let me have a look at.
Oh. Who wants to
Uh-oh.
go next?
What happened?
Todd, do you want to show what you've been up to for the last couple hours? Because I haven't seen yours in a bit.
Yeah, I'm the one that lags behind, but I don't know if you can see that very well.
No, it's coming in. That's awesome.
I'm still figuring out my camera position and everything, so that I don't know. The whole screen mirroring thing didn't seem to work out. Don't buy that app yet.
Come to bed.
But it'll get there.
You okay?
Yeah. I can't draw and talk at the same time. So good job, the rest of you is getting so much work done in this amount of time. That's fantastic.
Well, your piece is great too. I really like that highlight you're doing on the leg, or the shading, I should say. But that shape is really great for
Me?
that for you, Todd, that inner thigh where that muscle is coming in looks really cool.
Yeah. I feel like
Yeah,
honestly, you're putting
it'll
like
get there.
a little bit more
I'm gonna
work
put
into
shine in
it
there.
than we are. You know, at least I feel like y'all are putting more work into it than I am with the color and all of that. Like, there's no way I would let you guys in on my coloring process because I do it 3 or 4 times over every time I do something.
Oh,
Oh man, these are looking really good.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, Mike, you've laid down a lot of black there while I was just drawing away.
Oh yeah, I threw down a lot. I was originally
Yeah,
doing
right?
like a black thing behind Doom. Like if I show you my thumbnail real quick, I was going to do this kind of like feathered effect with like
Oh,
no
yeah, yeah.
background. But then I was like, oh, what the heck? I'll do like a layer. Like so, I drew like a big ray gun in the background with some like monitors and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And kind of just abstracted these like pillars in here. So there's like 2 stone pillars coming in the background.
Yeah, nice. And then Nate, yours has like so much movement. I really like that. It's really.
Thank you. That's
You're
something
really
that
good at
I've
it.
tried to think a lot about is gesture, and I feel like I don't always succeed. But I want to get the different like levels of gesture in there where it's like this is one stroke this way, and then the legs are 1 stroke this way.
Yeah. Did you reference that at all, or was that just
It
straight
reminds
from
me
you?
of
No,
it's very
I actually didn't. And I reference a lot of stuff. I reference, like you were talking about Johnny earlier. I don't remember if we were recording, but you said, you use a lot of reference, and I do as well. But this is my thumbnail for it. And I just tried to, emulate a lot of, because a lot of times my thumbnails are so much more energetic. There's so much more energy in the little drawing than there is in the big drawing.
Yeah.
And that's really
all the time.
Yeah, it's so easy to do it
actually, wait,
when you're drawing it
here.
small.
I never. When you do a thumbnail like that, do you then blow it up and lightbox it? How does what do you do with that thumbnail afterwards? Or do you just
This
figure it out and then you draw it completely from scratch?
Yeah, it was just sitting here, and I was trying to, and I've blue light blue lines in before, where I'll scan them in, but this one in particular, I just drew it here. You can see I've inked over a lot of them, just trying to clean my brush up. There's several different poses here that I almost went with, but then I went with this one because that's the one that I did in the gray pencil. But yeah, then I drew it completely from just from looking at this thumbnail, trying to match the energy of that, which often I'm not successful at. A lot of times when I do thumbnails, like I said, a lot of times I feel like I don't match the energy. And what I've tried to do now is when I thumbnail something that I really like, I try to just exaggerate it even more in the final drawing. And usually it ends up being something that I'm happy with, but I try and just exaggerate because my own style that I tend to stick with is something that is fairly grounded in, I don't want to say reality because I don't really care about reality, but something that you have a reference point for.
Sure.
Even with something like the Hulk, I want it to be something that you can go, oh, okay, I understand the weight of what that drawing is. And it's so much easier to do that big. You know what I mean?
Now, okay, do you
nice.
do you have a light box or a light table? Do you ever use that?
I do somewhere. It's probably sitting around the table.
That used to be a major in my process, is I would do those thumbnails like that, but then I would blow it up on a photocopy machine and lightbox it. It'd lose as little of that initial dynamic quality that I possibly could. And again, for me as well, like having it get watered down, but it's also just really time saving. If you have you guys ever worked that way?
No, never.
I use the Lightbox.
We'll. Sorry, what?
Yeah, no, I used the Lightbox for a while. I did my third year illustration project, was doing like basically like drew, it was kind of a comic. It was sequential and it was like completely silent. And it was just like a whole book that I did. And most of that was like Lightboxed inks. And yeah, it is good for like, it is good for like not losing the movement. Because I would like, even if I drew really tight pencils, you can like dial down the brightness of the Lightbox so that your actual pencils are faint and you have less to work with, so you can keep more movement in it. I found that I thought was really good.
Yeah, I'll
probably
print
now
my,
that you're digital, you don't
pencils out blue line every once in a while, and that helps. Sometimes, but not always. I feel like sometimes I get kind of bogged down in trying to stay true to this drawing that I never intended to be finished, and I'm like, no, it needs to look like that because I like it, even though I know it's not a finished thing that anyone really should ever see.
Interesting.
All right, well, I think I'm gonna leave it at that for tonight. I think I'm good. It's getting late where I am now, so I think I'll leave you guys to it.
No, I think that's a good point to call it a night. Right, definitely.
Yeah. All right.
Especially if I were to flip my camera right now, my whole room is absolutely pitch black. Let's see if I can show you guys real quick.
So, all right. Well, then were we gonna all wrap it up then?
I think that seems like a good place to cut it off for the night.
Cool. All right. So we're doing Joker next week.
Next week is the Joker. Okay.
Cool.
Awesome.
Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and
thanks, guys.
Thanks as always to Nate, and Johnny, and Todd for all joining us tonight and for hosting and showing us everybody's incredible art. So, yeah, it was fun, and I'm looking forward to next week and doing the Joker.
Yeah, same. All right. See you next week.
Cool.
Nice one.
Good luck, guys. Good talk to you soon. See you on the internet.